The fifth round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series saw a huge momentum shift in the charge for the 2013 title, with Gregor Hutu able to open up a massive 45-point lead over his nearest rival, Hugo Luis. Whilst Hutu was able to finally break his unlucky streak at the fast track down under, Luis had suffered problems placing him well down the field, and it means that if the Brazilian has any chance of regaining lost ground, he simply cannot put a foot wrong in this, the middle portion of the season. The month of May in iRacing brings the series to America, and whilst oval drivers are thinking about Darlington, Charlotte and Indianapolis, for World Championship Series drivers, the bumps and curbs of Sebring take centre stage. A track with very long straightaways, high-speed corners and huge braking zones. Drivers are going to have a very firm hold of their cars just to avoid watching part of the race from the grandstand. Gregor Hutu has won twice at this racetrack in WCS history, and Luis once, with the two drivers sharing the top step of the podium the last 2 years. Keep an eye out for Luke McLean also, looking to bounce back after disastrous qualifying meant he couldn't take the field for his home race 2 weeks ago, as he's finished on the podium the last 3 years, with Atzi Kirchhoff and Ben Corner also ones to really look out for. This is a pure Team Redline track, and Hutu will be hoping that his teammates can help him along the way to increase the points gap even further. Down the field, the battle from 3rd through 5th and also 6th through 12 continues to hot up, with drivers learning that every point really does count. On a track that rewards braveries but punishes mistakes, will we see some drivers doing alternate strategies like Del Orco did last time out to try and move their way through the field? Sebring always shrouds itself with mystery and countless questions to answer, but we'll aim to find out some of them over the course of the next 2 hours. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series from Sebring International Raceway in Highlands County, Florida. Will Vincent, Ben Rothberg, Marius Golombeck and Paul Jenkins here for GlacierTV, bringing all of the action from trackside during the course of this broadcast. Don't forget to stay in touch on Twitter using the hashtag iRacingWCS and keep up to date with all developments on the iRacing World Championship Series website. We're going to go straight ahead and introduce this brilliant, magnificent racetrack, the GlacierTV Track Guide. Sebring International Raceway started life as the United States Army Air Force's training base, where from 1941 through to 1946, pilots learned to fly the B-17 Flying Fortress. On the 31st of December 1949, the track played host to its first race, before hosting the first 12 Hours of Sebring in 1952, now a predominant feature on the motor racing calendar. Formula 1 has visited the track once in 1959, and the track could also host the first IndyCar test session of the year. The track's bumpiness and changing surface puts real pressure on drivers and cars alike, who have to adapt to many different challenges over the course of the 6-kilometer circuit. Add transition from day to night, and for many race fans around the world, Sebring offers a unique challenge not seen at many other racetracks. The all-time lap record was set by Marcel Fassler in a time of 1 minute 43.886. You see the car as it comes past the start-finish line now holds it to the right-hand side, close to the wall as possible to get himself a nice arc into turn number 1. This is a fast left-hander. Different lines available through here, as is the case at many corners in Sebring. Use a little bit of the curb if needed on the exit, but be careful not to go into the dirt. Now you come braking into turn number 2. It's a left-hander. You really got to get yourself a good run through all of these corners, set yourself up nicely for the final part of this complex, turn number 4, which then leads into a very fast right-hander for turn number 5. If you get yourself good speed through here and Gurney Bend, turn number 6, and you've got ample opportunity to try and set yourself up for a pass into turn number 7, the hairpin, making full use of all the slipstream available. Now turn number 7 is one of the slowest corners on the racetrack. It's a right-hand hairpin. You really got to get a good exit through here as well. The track darts to the left and then to the right on exit as you now lead yourself down into the Fangio chicane, turns number 8 and 9. Now you've really got to make sure that you get that car working beautifully on this section of the racetrack. The first part of it is turn number 10. Cunningham corner. It's a 90-degree right-hander, but like so many corners on this racetrack, it immediately, one apex leads into another. As already, you're into turn number 11 and 12, Collier Curve. Now, this is nice, but you've got to get yourself to the right once again to block any overtaking opportunities, and then come down into turn number 13, Tower Turn, another 90-degree right-hander. You've got yourself now a little bit of a short straightaway before you take yourself into a double apex left-hander. This is turn number 14, Bishop Bend. Take it pretty much full speed before you break yourself down into turn number 15, and this is a right-hand corner. You've got to make sure you don't use too much of the curb here, because it really can unsettle the car. It really has got some sharp edges. Before turn 16, Le Mans corner. Use that curb this time on exit. You're going down now the longest straightaway on the entirety of the racetrack, the Ullman straightaway, before you set yourself up for the majestic turn number 17. Now, this is a corner that has so many different lines, so many different apexes. None of them, however, are as fast as when you nail it perfectly on that one flying lap. Sunset Bend, turn number 17. Take your line, hope it works. Use those bumps to your advantage to help turn that car. Come out of it, you run a little bit wide if you need to, and then you'll come past the start-finish line here at Sebring International Raceway, and that is one lap in the books of this brutal yet beautiful, magnificent racetrack. Thanks for listening. So, welcome back to the GlacierTV pre-race show here. Will Vincent and Marius Golombeck here for the pre-race show. And Marius, Martin Kroenke starting on pole position here today. He is currently sat 4th in the championship standings. In fact, we're going to run through the championship standings in just a moment. But for Martin Kroenke today, with Ati Kirchhoff further down the field, this is his chance right now to get himself into the top 3 in the standings.
That's a great shot for him. I mean, he's had a good season so far. 4th position in the championship particularly isn't bad. He's just a couple of points behind Kirchhoff, but also just a couple of points ahead of Jake Sturgis. And both Sturgis down in 14th position as well as Kirchhoff in 8th failed the qualifying, and will just prove once again going ahead in the race, making up positions right here on Sebring will just prove to be one of the difficult things the drivers have to manage today.
And to have a look at the championship standings, it is Gregor Hutu still leading the way with 225 points. That last round, he was able to get himself a 45-point advantage over Hugo Luis in the Maestro ID car after Luis had issues at the start of the race. Ati Kirchhoff still running well in that 3rd position with Kroenke in 4th. Jake Sturgis currently running in the 5th position for iNext Racing. Yudan Arumi for Nexus Esports in 6th. And then Fulvio Barazzini in the 7th position, Luke McLean in 8th, Mo Garfilo in joint 8th position, and then Enzo Benito in 10th. And you have to say right now for Hugo, he really has to get himself ahead of Gregor in this race, because he needs to kind of close that gap now.
Yeah, and I think considering the starting grid here, it might be a good shot for him to get a good advantage at the start, or maybe make a pass in the first couple of turns. As you know, of course, the Sebring track has got a pretty good overtaking opportunity, which is, of course, the hairpin. The drivers will go through there the first time, and maybe from the start right away, you'll have a good shot at overtaking. That is turn 7, of course. We're having a 17-track turn circuit here, so plenty of overtaking spots here. 5.955 kilometers long and 52 laps today, so regular racing distance. But as we've mentioned already in the pre-race show, this is one of the hardest tracks in the schedule. Very bumpy, very on the edge every lap, and if you want to be fast, you'll have to stay consistently on the edge.
You will have to stay consistently on the edge as well. And we talked about a couple of points in the track guide. We'll talk about turn number 1 a little bit more, because really, that corner, despite it being fast, there is only one line through there.
Yeah, there really is, and if you've got the setup set up pretty much to have grip all the way through the turn, so you can't exactly afford to lift a lot. You need to stay fully on the gas to make the turn and to be fast, and that's just how it goes with a couple of turns. You need to be fully on the gas. In the last turn in the S's, you need to be so far on the limit just to be fast, and it just sums up through the lap. And if you're just going a little bit more careful, maybe lift here, maybe brake a little bit earlier, that's easily 2 or 3 tenths a lap.
And as far as the team battle comes into play as well, we talked about how at Phillip Island 2 weeks ago it was a pure Team Redline track. Here, it's a little bit different. Redline has been fast previously, but today, My 3ID do look as though they have the upper hand as far as qualifying went.
It doesn't look too bad for the qualifying standings. Definitely with Martin on pole, his first pole position this season. Just a tiny bit ahead of Gregor Hutu though. It's just about 17 thousandths here. So talking about a 1 minute 30 track, that really is just a glimpse of an eye. And Hugo Lewis down in third position, also only 400 away. And then it's the first couple of tenth gap to Stephen Michaels and Fulvio Barozzini. And you may not take these guys out of contention because they've also been known as pretty good starters as well as clunkers, so I think we'll have a pretty interesting start to go here.
We're going to get live footage from Sebring up in just a couple of moments' time to run through the rest of your top 10 then, with Gregor Hutu in that second position. You've got Hugo Luis in third, and then Stephen Michaels, fourth place in qualifying. Amazing job by him.
Yeah, absolutely, and his teammate is right behind him, Fulvio Barozzini, and I mean, fourth and fifth in such a strong grid. A couple of drivers struggling here, but overall, taking a look at the times, even if you're down in place number 20, you're only just about half a second off the top 5 position. So, talking about the track, a slight mistake can cost you 2 or 3 tenths easily. So even in the qualifying, you've only got 2 laps, and one of these laps at least has to be completely spot on to get you somewhere up in the grid. Slight mistake, easily 5 places down.
And we, of course, talked to Team Redline earlier this week. If you'd like to listen to that interview, you can do so by heading over to YouTube and searching for GlacierTV over there. We'll be talking to My 3ID this coming Monday. If you'd like to ask some questions to them, you can do that by using the hashtag GlacierTV on Twitter. Running through the rest of the top 10 then, my attention automatically turns to that number 24 car of Luke McLean. He didn't manage to qualify at his home round at Phillip Island. However, he has finished on the podium the last 3 runnings of this event, Marius. So really, he's going to have a good shot starting inside the top 10 once again.
Absolutely, and a couple of drivers, of course, from the GT cars. iRacing Service has got a couple of GT car series. So even if you run the Corvette, if you run the Cadillac, the McLaren, almost can be certain that in all of these series, Sebring is going to be run once at least during the season. So all of the drivers have got sufficient practice at the track, and in the F1 car it's still quite different, but talking about track knowledge, I think all of the drivers should be right up there.
And grid up on your screen momentarily. To run through some of the drivers a little bit further down the field, Ati Kirkhoff starting in the 9th position, one of his worst qualifying of the year. Then you have Ika Hapana, who rounds out your top 10. In 11th you have Max Alorco. He had a great race last time out at Phillip Island, taking the lead twice on a different strategy, however. Martin Patella in 12th, Yudan Amuri 13th, Mogar Filo in 14th, Jake Sturgill 15th, Pablo Lopez 16th, Sam Cattell 17th, Joni Tamana 18th, Christian Levent 19th, Paul Ilbrink 20th. You look at that lot through 11th through 20th, Paul, and really, they are separated by nothing, not only here today, but in the point standings as well.
Well, it's a testament to how very good the racing is going to be here and how close everything is. So, yeah, I mean, for all the way back, it's very close racing all the way through.
So, in all, Marius, we've got a very close grid, a total of 35 cars qualified here today. One of the things that we did notice before we went on air is that there were a number of Pro Series drivers who were attempting to race their way into the field. However, by the looks of it, all of the World Championship Series drivers have made the trip here today. So it doesn't look as though many, if any at all, of the Pro Series drivers are eligible to race.
That's correct, and the rule, of course, says that 35 drivers of the Drivers' World Championship Cup licensed drivers are allowed to race. If there are less of them qualifying, the pro drivers will get a shot at making it into the season race prematurely. Of course, there will be the Pro Series at the end of the season again. But if you're pro licensed, if you're just wanting maybe to take a look in the driver's field, trying to see how racing goes, this might be a shot later during the season to get into one of the races. Of course, we are still relatively early, so no shot for a pro racer today.
But we'll turn our attention. I mean, the Pro Series is still 2 seasons away, but Oli Patera in that 7th position, he would have qualified in this race, showing that there's a lot of talent coming up through the Pro Series ranks at the moment. And for some of the guys lower down the standings there, I saw Jesper Pedersen just fly off the racetrack. He really would have had a very easy time getting into the top 10.
That's correct, and I mean, it just shows a couple of drivers who have been running the Grand Prix series all season long. They are into the car, they've pretty much got the rhythm in, they've been running these tracks in the Grand Prix series, so they've all got the setup, they're all pretty much set to go here, and it shows that it doesn't have to be so hard to get a good result in here. Remember, a couple of these drivers have been trying out in the Drivers' World Championship last season as they've been pro drivers. And then they've just matured up, picked up the license in the Pro Series, and now are eligible Drivers' World Championship drivers. So it just shows the drivers' development includes, of course, trying out for these races, trying to get a qualifying spot, and then just seeing in the race how the racing goes. And that's just how you learn.
And there is actually one driver, unbeknown to us, Antoine Hegelin, in the number 69 car, who is a Pro Series driver who has been able to get into the race. So congratulations to him for doing so. We've got about 2 minutes before we go to the grid though, Marius. Who's going to win here today?
You ask me questions. Ask me maybe who's going to get the best start of the line, but I really can't tell. I know that Martin is a good starter, but also Gregor and Hugo aren't particularly bad starters, so I can't even tell who's going first into the first turn. I think my money's on Martin for the race, and he's just been having a good runs in the past couple of races, and he just shows that he's just getting better and better, and he's almost up on the level of Hugo and Gregor there, so my money's on Martin.
Paul?
Well, I have to agree. I think Martin is going to put in a really good showing here, but I would certainly not discount Hugo as making a very good showing here at this this particular venue. So I'd like to put some money on Hugo there.
You're going to put your money on Hugo, Louise. I am going to put my money on Hutu. So there are our 3 choices. Don't forget, we'd like to start by saying a thank you to Team Redline for World Championship tipping. You can get involved with World Championship tipping every single week. All you need to do is head over to teamredline.co.uk/tipping. I'd like to give a shout out to our friends over at ETV as well. And of course, for all of you who are new to iRacing, this is iRacing. This is the premier road racing series in the world. This is the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. Checker flag will be out in about 30 seconds time, so very quickly we'd like to welcome you to the 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. Will Vincent, Marius, Golombeck, Paul Jenkins in the booth. Ben Rothberg will be along shortly as well. And this is Sebring International Raceway. This is a very fast, tricky technical track. The track info up on your screen. Checker flag is out, and we are now going to head it down to the grid. Martin Kroenke starting this race from the first position, a qualifying time of 1 minute 31 seconds, 0.571. Gregor Hutu will line up in the second position, 131.588. Hugo Louis will start in the third position, with Stephen Michaels in fourth, Antoine Hegelin in the fifth position, Fulvio Barrazzoni in the sixth spot, Andrei Borcha in 7th, Philippe McLean in the 8th position, Atsi Kirchhoff in 9th, Ika Harpada will round out your top 10. Max Delorco in 11th, Martin Patella 12th, Yudo Rumi 13th, Mogar Filo in 14th, Jake Sturgis rounding out your 15th position, Pablo Lopez in 16th, Simon Cattell 17th, Joni Tamada 18th, Christian Laurent 19th, and Paul Ilbrink in the 20th position. A total of 35 cars have made their way to Sebring International Raceway, this 3.7 mile, 17 corner racetrack, and we're going to go racing for 52 laps in less than 20 seconds time. Can Martin Kroenke lead this race from the pole and claim his first victory in the World Championship Series this year, or can Hutu or Louis make it another victory for their team? Lights out, here we go, and I tell you what, Louis got a great start. He's already up into the fourth position. Amazing start there by Luke McLean. We've got a huge time at the back of the field there. Justin Pedersen upside down. We've got 5 cars involved. We also believe that we've got Jason Glover out of the race earlier, Cornet and Ricky Adatalo looking so they are out of the race as well. The other cars are able to get through turn 1, but then we have a second crash down into turn number 3. Marius, a crazy start. They'll get a replay what happened at the start of the race, but Conley still leads with Gregor Hutu, Hugo Louise in third, and Luke McLean up into the fourth position.
Yeah, absolutely amazing start by McLean then. Teammates Fulvio Berrezzini and Stephen Michaels already fighting for the fifth position there. They've both had a good start, but no, they are not exactly decided on who's going to take the position. Maybe a chance for Butcher behind them to profit from that. No, they both stay in fifth and sixth.
Atsi Kirchhoff struggling early on as well. He is currently working with Max DeLorco on the racetrack. And I tell you what, Atsi Kirchhoff right now is running down in about the 15th position. But meanwhile, Gregor Hutu, this is the battle for the race lead. He's going to try and slot it down the inside, not quite close enough as they come into the S's for the first time. Now, down into turn number 16, the Le Mans corner, onto that long back straightaway for the first time in this race. The battle for the race lead. Gregor Hutu wants to lead early on. He's closing that gap as they come down in Sunset Bend. Turn number 17, down he'll go to the inside. Will he get the job done on lap number 1? Yes, he will. Not quite, actually. They're going to be side by side as they come by the start. It looks like Hutu will just about get clear down into turn number 1. But Martin Kroenke will now have the inside line as they sweep it left 90 degrees into the first corner of the racetrack. And Gregor Hutu going a little bit wide there will allow Kroenke, and also Louis going to come down the inside. And Hugo Louis will take momentarily that second position.
What a great move by Hugo Louis there, just waiting and waiting. He saw what was developing in front of him and just picked the exact right spot when he knew that Hutu was going to go wide there. The track narrows and Hutu had to slow the car up in order to try and make the turn, but it's certainly not over yet. Here comes Hutu again.
Hutu on the outside line. Hugo Louis spins it a little bit. This is going to allow Hutu to get back up into the second position. Hugo Louis went defensive down into the hairpin. He almost spun my car, a little semi-spin there. And now Hutu back up into the second position and hounding on Martin Kroenke. Hugo Louis needs to get back into this fight and needs to get into it fast. Meanwhile, it looks as though Borgia is able to get himself up into the fifth position by getting past Fulvio Berrezzini. But we are keeping it with your race leader for the time being. This is the battle for the race lead, and if you say you cannot overtake the World Championship Series, proof once again that it can happen. Gregor Hutu, Martin Kroenke going hammer and tong in the early part of this race, and Marius, this time Hutu once again with a much better run. He's going to slot it down the inside, and surely this time he'll take that race lead away into Sunset Bend.
Yeah, he's got the inside. Clearly, he's got a good run on Kroenke there, and taking the position right into the last turn. Maybe now the chance for Kroenke to get a good run out of the turn, collect a lot of slipstream, and then try it again into the second turn. But it just looks like he's too far away, and it looks like Luke McLean, yes, he has made a jump start there. So devastating start for the Team Redline driver. He's come down pit road, and he has to serve a drive-through penalty here, and that's going to throw him all the way back into almost last position.
Yeah, and that is huge disappointing for Luke McLean. We talked about it before the start of the race. He has finished on the podium in every running of this event. Kroenke going a little bit wide there out of turn number 4. That's going to lose him momentum all the way through turn 5 and 6 as they approach the hairpin once again. Hugo Louis wasn't able to let that gap working, however. He is slotted into the third position. Stephen Michaels, he's still running in that 4th spot with Antoine Hegelin in the 5th position. Fulvio Berrezzini in 6th. Andre Borcher now up into the 7th position. Luke McLean way down the field now. Atsi Kirchhoff, I tell you what, he is struggling though. He is running in that 11th position, Paul, outside the top 10. Well, Kroenke still running in 2nd. Atsi needs to get a move on.
Yeah, not a heck of a lot of time to make a move here, especially considering that Gregor is now trekking out from the field now having got in front of Martin. Got a report from Martin's engineers that his steering has gotten a little bit strange on him. He may be struggling mechanically with that car, so we'll have to keep an eye on that.
And we are getting word that it's possible that Hutu is starting this race on lower fuel. We'll keep an eye out on this as this race progresses. Don't forget, live timing is available by heading over to isowc.org/live. But as they come past the stripe once again, we're going to get a look at DeLocco's Kroenke going very sideways there, and Hugo Louis almost running to the back of him. This is going to allow Michael to get a bit of a jump. In fact, no, because he was slow there, but Andre Borcher now up into 4th position. The two MyFairD drivers always came together, Marius, but actually it's Andre Borcher.
Oh, and crash between the teammates! Crash between teammates Michaels and Berrezzini as Michaels clips the rear of Berrezzini's car, damaging not only his front wing but the complete car of Berrezzini, and Berrezzini's out.
Berrezzini is out of the race, and that is going to be hugely disappointing for that number 10 MMM machine, as his car is now on pit road trying to get himself some service to his race car. But as I say, that gap right now between Gregor Hooter and Martin Conque as they came past the stripe, it was up to 5 seconds on the racetrack. And Paul, that was all because of the fact that Conque almost lost that car coming out of Sunset Bend.
Absolutely, it was. Yeah, I didn't actually get to see what happens in there, but Sturdy's more action on that.
Yeah, we've got right now Sturgios looking as though he is going to try and get himself into a big battle on the racetrack. Let's see what happens to him, Marius, because he is battling really hard right now.
Yeah, he is. I'm getting word that he does not have force feedback. That is Martin Conque, so a difficult session for him here without force feedback to maintain the car on the road. And I think if this goes on, he's just going to let his teammates Andre and Hugo pass.
And that is going to be huge disappointing for Martin Conque. He comes down into Sunset Bend once again. Let's see what happens to this car this time by. No power steering there for Martin Conque as he works himself through the corner. This time a little bit better, going a little bit wide once again. You can tell that car isn't working the way he wants it to do. And we're having a look down the field as well. Still got battles going on the racetrack. And I tell you what, Max DeLorco is already up into the 5th position on the racetrack. And he is closing down Andre Borgia at a rapid rate of knots in that battle right now for the 4th position.
And I believe Pablo Lopez is out of the race. He's just had a little incident early on and now looks like he's completely recovered from the race. And with Pablo Lopez together, we've got 8 cars completely out of the race and a couple of cars severely damaged here. And I believe that's just, taking the toll on the track. Very bumpy here and a couple of drivers having a bit of an issue here.
Max DeLorco looking down to the inside as they come down into turn number 9. He's going to make that pass work there on Andre Borgia. Max DeLorco up into the 4th position on the racetrack. Don't forget, it was DeLorco 2 weeks ago who took the lead away from Gregor Hooter not once but twice out Phillip Island. He started this race in the 11th position on the racetrack, already now running in the 4th position. Max DeLorco in that 52 car, one of the more popular drivers, Paul, in the WCS, and now he's hunting down Hugo Luis and Martin Conque in that battle for 2nd and 3rd.
I believe Max started, I think it was in 11th, so he's just tearing the field up on his way up. Another spectacular showing by DeLorco. A very, very accomplished driver in the last couple of races, and he's certainly showing it here.
So, as they come past start-finish line once again to put their 5th lap in the books, Gregor Hooter did a 1 minute 33.332 last time by. He now has an 8-second gap over Hugo Luis. Surely he is on a 2-stop strategy here today. Martin Conque is still in that 3rd position. Max DeLorco now up into 4th. Andre Borgia in the 5th position. Stephen Michaels in 6th. Ika Hapana into the 7th position. I saw car going slowly there. That's Sturgios. Sturgios was looking down to the inside out into turn number 1. Wasn't able to get the job done. Antoine Hegelin in the 9th position. And Ati Kirkov still running in the 10th spot of the race. To run through your retirees, Fulvio Barazini has scored 1 lap down out of the race. Pablo Lopez out of the race. Justin Lover out of the race, as is Jesper Pedersen, Piero Britsu, Mogar Fido and Riku Alatalo. And it looks like Enzo Benito is off as well, and he is running down in the 19th position. He's brought his car onto pit road and he is back out again. To give you an update on Luke McLean as well, he is now scored in the 22nd position, 38 seconds behind your race leader, and that shows me just how important it is not jump the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you lose a little bit on the start, even if you lose a position, all right, you've done that, but you've got 52 laps to go and you've got plenty of time to regain your position. But if you do what Luke McLean did, the race is practically over, and even with a perfect race, you've got almost no chance of making it back into the top 10.
So, Hooter completes lap number 6, and meanwhile, what we're going to do is we're going to show you a replay of that crash with Fulvio Barazini, and Marius, you and Joni are taking a look at that right now.
Yeah, and Barazini crashed with his teammate, of course, so that's particularly... sorry, no, it's actually not his teammate anymore because they've split up from MMM. So it's, still a very, very tragic situation here as we're taking a look at what exactly happened here. Barazini comes through the last turn here, taking a look at what's going on ahead of him, then making the pass towards Stephen Michaels there, as Michaels just clips his rear and completely sends Barazini off and into the barriers, and that's quite certainly the end of the race for Barazini, and no chance of recovery there. Car completely damaged, and it's over for him.
Meanwhile, Hooter now has that gap up to 9.2 seconds over Hugo Luis in the battle for the race lead. Hooter last time by did a 1:33.049. That was his fastest lap of the race. Hugo Luis, his fastest lap, that was also set last time by a 1:30.242. So right now, Husupul is a full 1.2 seconds a lap faster than Hugo Luis. He surely has to be in a two-stop strategy.
Yeah, it's got to be on lighter fuel. So Gregor Hutu right now just wants to make a bigger and bigger gap as it goes on. I want to take a look real quick. Looks like Del Orco was right on the gearbox of Martin Kroenke now. So I think that it'll be amazing to see if Del Orco is going to go ahead and make the move on him, or maybe wait for another position.
As they work themselves through the S's that time, Del Orco was so close to losing that car. He's going to get a huge run down in Sunset Bend. Now he'll dart down to the inside. Battle for the third position. Del Orco up into that third spot. We presume that he will also be on that two-stop strategy as well. Del Orco loves the alternative strategy. He is now into that third position. However, he is already 13 seconds behind your race leader, Gregor Hutu. Hutu is still leading the way. Meanwhile, a little bit further down the field, you have a battle between Ati Kirchhoff and Antoine Hegelin in the battle for the 9th and 10th position. And you have to say, Marius, that while Hutu in a Team Redline car is pulling away at a dramatic rate to not, Ati Kirchhoff really is struggling in the other Team Redline car.
Again, you can't really tell if they are running the same strategy, because it looks like Gregor Hutu on the pace is definitely on a two-stop strategy, such as Max Del Orco. And by the times of Atzi Kirchhoff, he's just in the 134s here. Looks like he's on a solid one-stop here, so completely different strategy for the teammates there. Might also put up the question if they are running different setups. However, the My3ID drivers, Lewis, Kroenke and Böttcher, all seem to be running on a one-stop strategy, so that will be quite interesting to see throughout the race, as Hugo Lewis is already down 10 seconds. He's lost 5 of them in the last turn with the little incident with his teammates. So I can't really say if that has cost him the race yet, but it will definitely take a big hit towards the recovery and maybe the chance of the first position.
Meanwhile, Paul, Gregor Hutu last time by a 1:32.992 as he comes past the start-finish line. Once again, the other Team Redline driver, the blue, grey and black there of Gregor Hutu, this time does a 1:32.968. Blistering pace right now.
Yeah, it just cements the idea that Gregor has got a lighter race car. He's just putting out amazing paces each lap, just getting faster and faster. So we'll have to wait and see how long it takes before he gets that car into the pits here.
We're currently working ourselves on lap number 9 of 52 here in the 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. For those of you who are just joining us, we have a number of retirees out this race. We had an incident at the start-finish line, which took out Rico Natalo, Mogar Di Filo, Pietro Brito, and also Jesper Pedersen. You have Jason Lovett, who's out of the race, Pablo Lopez out of the race, Fulvio Barazini out of the race, as well as Martin Patella, who scored 1 lap down, and Yuda Rumi scored 1 lap down. Rumi really is struggling. Meanwhile, we're having a look at Dion Burgess in the 16th position right now. He's involved in a very close battle with the Radical Steel Series car, the number 19 car of Andrew Lecom. And Marius, it's that point of the season right now that every point does count. You've got slow cars that come down into the hairpin once again, and that it looks as though that is Yudan Arumi, who really is struggling with a bent rear wing.
Well, I have to be honest, in all the points of the season the points count, and you don't want to give away points just like that. And even if it's just 2 positions, it might make up 4, might make up 6 points. And these will be the points at the end of the season which you might need to get 2 or 3 positions up or down. So you have to take every shot this series. It's just so competitive that you cannot miss out on any opportunity to get additional points, maybe even here.
Stefan Michaels, meanwhile, he is currently battling with Andre Borcher for that 5th position on the racetrack. It doesn't look as though he has the speed in a straight line to close up to the rear of Borcher and make that pass. But Michaels last lap by did a 1:35.074. Now in dirty air, compare that to 1:35.053 there of Andre Borcher. These two are very closely separated on the racetrack. And right now, for Borcher, he has got to be careful because Michaels will slide it down the inside if he gets any shots to do so. Because he hasn't had a good start to the season, and right now he wants a top 5 finish.
And there's some action on the track for Burgess, I believe.
Yeah, Dion Burgess is currently in that 16th position, still passing with Andrew Lecom. And right now those two are going side by side. Blake Townend involved in this as well. Burgess having to take the outside line down into turn number 2. He's trying to work around the outside of Blake Townend, struggling a little bit right now in that 15th position in the number 23 Radical Steel Series car. Townend, it looks as though he's kind of backing Dion Burgess up into Andrew Lecom, and also Wes Richards is there as well in the Azure racing car. And I tell you what, if these 4 drivers don't sort it out very soon, Luke McLean will be involved in that battle as well, Paul.
Absolutely. It looks like it's getting very tight back there a little further into the pack. You had mentioned, of course, Bircher. Stephen Michaels is trying to position himself. A lot of moves are being made here at the end of this straight into that last turn, that sweeping right-hander. So we'll have to see if Bircher's going to try and get an angle on him. He's not quite close enough. It doesn't seem like yet to try and make a move, but he is slowly closing in. But Bircher definitely does want to try and keep him behind him if he can, at least to the next stop. And very good showing for him right now.
Let's reset it for a moment, Marius, because right now Hugo Luis is doing lap times in 1 minute 33. 1 minute 33.888 last time by. Max DeLorco is closing in at a rate of about 0.2 of a second a lap. Gregor Houtu is a full second lap faster. It's not in the bag yet for Gregor Houtu. He still has to push every single lap. I think though for Luis, the fact he lost 4 seconds in that 1 lap there of his almost near miss with Martin Kroenke, Luis has to pedal that car right now.
Yeah, he absolutely has to, and there's no different situation than going straight to the front for him. And 13 seconds down at the moment, but he cannot really take too much safety here, because only 2 seconds behind him is Max DeLorco, and on his chase towards the first position, you don't actually want to have a car right behind you, because that's how it puts you into the mistakes. And as soon as DeLorco gets past, Hugo Luis probably has the pace to follow him, but then he'll just be in the way. So anything he can do right now is just stay in second, try to push the car and try to gain time, and just put in a couple of good laps there, as he's losing about a second per lap to Gregor Houtu. But then again, 2-stop for Houtu, most likely a 2-stop for DeLorco, or very early 1-stop. So it might still look good for Hugo Luis, but with 13 seconds down, 70 minutes into the race, this is lap 12 right now, it's safe to say it's not going to be easy, that's for sure.
We're going to get yourself a replay of the first couple of corners in a couple of minutes' time. Meanwhile, to have a look at the gains and losses so far in this race, Houtu up 1 position, Luis up 1 position, Max DeLorco up 8 positions in this race, Martin Kroenke started this race in pole, now running in the 4th position, Michaels is currently running in that 5th position. He has lost 1 place in this race so far, and all the way up to the top 10 you've got Jake Sturgis, who's up 8 positions as well, Iker Hapala up 4 spots, and then in the 10th position Edgar up 12 positions. He's one of the biggest movers in this race. Wes Richards up 16 positions, Chao Pinot up 16 positions, and Andrew Plum up 17 positions in this race. There's some bigger movers early on in this race, but now working ourselves on lap number 12. And Paul, I know you're sat there with your calculator trying to figure out when the pit window opens for 2-stop race. And for Houtu, he's only about 6 laps away from that.
He's very close. I want to bring some attention. Andre Bocher is out of the race from 5th place. Andre lost it in turn 1, hit the sand at the outside of that turn. The car snapped to the left, smashed into the wall, and that's it. It looks like we're going to take a look at the replay now. And we'll go ahead and go back there, Will, if you want to call this one.
Yeah, and it was very, very close there for Max DeLorco, and he has been pushing since the very start of this race. Been trying to get that car working absolutely to perfection, but see, the replay is up on your screen momentarily, and it was so close there for Max DeLorco to just losing that car. He's been trying to hunt down Hugo Luis, but meanwhile, handing it over to Marius, and he's talking about the start of the race now.
Well, you've seen what exactly happened to Andre Bocher before we talk about the start of the race. He's just clipped the grass, basically sand more than that, on the exit of turn 1, and he's lifted off the gas. He's went back on it. He thought he had the car, pointing out the straight, but then the car just hits a little bump on the grass and goes straight to the left and into the wall, and that's 100% race over for Bocher here, who has been running a comfortable 5th position. He's had Stephen Michaels right behind him, but a good race for him so far, and that just opens up the situation for Michaels, Harpala and Sturgis, because they are all together now chasing Kroenke, and they've also got Atze Kerkhoff in the pack. So remember, we've been talking before the race that especially Kerkhoff and Sturgis are the main rivals for the top 3 positions in the championship, and with Kroenke dropped to 4th and maybe without force feedback here, he's not going to make up so much points here, and if Sturgis and Kerkhoff will have a good race after these laps, so they'll probably gain another position if someone makes a mistake, and then it's not looking too good for Kroenke.
We've been looking on board with Gregor Houtu in that number 1 car. That gap is now up to 17.65 seconds on the racetrack. Now, this is a long pit road on Sebring, so it's not going to be as simple as just get yourself 23 seconds into the distance and it will be game over. Hutu still has to work for it. Blake Townend, also the first of the drivers to make his first pit stop of the day in that Radical Steel Series car. But he is clearly on a two-stop strategy in this race. We probably expect Hutu to be in about 3 or 4 laps time, if he indeed is on a two-stop strategy. But meanwhile, Max Delorco, that gap right now between himself and Hugo Louis is now down into about 0.8 of a second on the racetrack. And last time Delorco did a 1:33.847, compare that to a 1:33.742 for Hugo Louis. And it does look as though for right now Delorco, now he's in that dirty air of just one car, he's finding it a lot more difficult to close up and find a way of getting past.
It's just reeling him in very, very slowly, reeling in Hugo here. So Hugo's got to be seeing that car getting larger in the mirror. Meanwhile, Gregor Hutu up front continues to turn on the heat, blazing laps. Last is green now, 1:32.371 on lap 12. So we're gonna have to wait and watch and see how long that. Looks like Max actually has fallen back maybe about 0.2 of a second. And last lap I was watching that turn 1 that took out Bocher. Delorco got very deep into that dust too, so a treacherous portion of the track you have to be very careful of.
But that gap still continues to close on the racetrack as they are working themselves down the back straightaway out of the Mont Bend, now down into turn number 17, Sunset Bend, once again here, working ourselves on lap number 14 now of 52. 14 laps going to be in the books this time by. And I tell you what, Delorco takes a very wide line into Sunset Bend, and Paul, we did talk about this in the track guide, you know, that final corner, there are so many different lines through there, and you kind of always have to take a line that works with the setup for the other 16 corners on the racetrack, because, you know, one line doesn't fit all here, at all.
Well, and it's so difficult to try and visualize how to get around that corner because it's such a sweeping corner, it's huge, you can't see all the way around it when you're in it, and it's so very bumpy that the car just jumps around on it. So you want to be as fast as you can out there, but you want to be very careful not to run into that outside wall on the way out. But we've seen it before, especially when we're making passes. They take that nice narrow turn in. Of course, a lot of downforce is going to help you here. So the guys with the higher downforce packages are better able to get through that with a variety of different lines.
So right now, Hutu last time by a 1:32.309, his fast lap of the race, as he working himself down the back straightaway once again to put his 15th lap in the books. Now, if you do the maths very simply, he should be in on towards pit road in about 2 to 3 laps time, depending on how much fuel he put into his car at the start of the race. Working himself out of Sunset Bend once again. Let's see what he does this time by a 1:32.206, his fastest lap of the race. Meanwhile, let's check ourselves down a little bit further through the field once again, because Antoine Hegelin has been trying to work on Ati Kirchhoff for the last 3 or 4 laps. But at the same time, those two are starting to try and catch Jake Sturgis and Ika Hala. But it does seem to be, though, that Antoine Hegelin closed up to the rear of Kirchhoff a little bit, Paul. Kirchhoff gets defensive, and then they start losing momentum to the 2 cars in front.
Absolutely. It's again, we were talking about different lines around here. And some cars, of course, faster. He's faster in certain sections, but then loses it in another section. So it's sort of a give and take back and forth.
So we're going to take a look at the start of the race now, Marius. And Marius, he had so much going on. Luke McLean jumping the start, and I think in many ways that set up a huge chain reaction.
Now we're going to take a look on what exactly happened. There's been a couple of people involved there. For example, I believe Mogafilo, Rico Alatalo, Pierre Bitsu, Jesper Pedersen, and the likes. So it's been a devastating start here, and we've been talking about that before the race. It's just, yeah, one of the difficult situations. The cars are not exactly set up to get quick off the line, and yeah, it's always a difficult situation to get the power down. And we're on with Mogafilo here, so you're going to take a look at what exactly happened as the lights go on and they go off. as Hugo gets a good start off the line, but then the car just swerves around and then he loses it. He's almost got the car, he's then lost it, and then he's just trying to avoid the people coming for him, and that's just no way. The start straight is very wide here, but with just that much damage on his car, he's just been bouncing left and right, and he's taken out about 4 to 5 cars here. A couple of drivers continuing, as Ben Cornett, for example, having a bit of damage on his car, but that's just how devastating it can go, as Cornett is still, that's good, still in 18th position, and Pablo Lopez out, Fulvio Barazini out, Jason Lovett out, Jesper Pedersen, Pierre Ubizu, Moga Filo and Rico Alatolo out. Together with Böttcher and Narumi, that makes 9 drivers total out. So I don't want to say it's a good stat, but it's still pretty okay for Sebring, I guess.
It is indeed, and the fact it happened before turn number 1 in many ways might have spread that field out a little bit, as Hutu working himself through a bit of traffic right now. Meanwhile, Max Delorco in that 3rd position is closing up now to the rear of Hugo Luis in that battle for the 2nd position on the racetrack. Before we get to this battle really hotting up, we talked about in the track going, it's a very narrow front straightaway here, and in many ways the fact that, you did have that incident on the start of finish line, you could almost say that, the fact it spread that field out a little bit does mean, in some ways, that you didn't have a secondary impact down into the first corner.
It did. That's really a treacherous start area, that front stretch, and then spilling into that wide turn that narrows into that just very narrow second straightaway. And it really did kind of help to spread the course out a little bit. It looks like Delorco was really, really close down to Hugo Luis. We're going to see a move any minute now.
Yeah, he's coming down the inside into Sunset Bend. Will he complete the pass? He just breezed down the inside. Max Delorco now up into the 2nd position in the race for the 2nd time in 2 races. Delorco charging his way through the field. Now he is the 2nd place driver. However, he's 25 seconds back from the rear of Gregor Hutu. We think also that Delorco is on a 2-stop strategy with his raw pace so far. We don't think he can do that on a 1-stop pace. We really do think he's on a 2-stop strategy right now. But Hutu in that race lead, Marius, 24 seconds. That is almost enough now to get himself onto pit road and come out in the race lead.
Yeah, he's definitely able to shift down a gear here, go to 90%, and just put that extra bit of safety in here. You can easily make a mistake. We've seen Andre Böttcher crash out of turn 1 just like that, going a bit hot into the turn, coming out onto the grass, onto the sand, and going to be immediately beached on the few bumps on the track on the outside. So there's just so little to do then, and it takes only so little to make a mistake like that. So you want to have the extra percentage in just to take a safe ride home, and with 25 seconds, frankly, Gregor Hutu can afford that.
Meanwhile, checking in on the battle for the 6th and 7th positions on the racetrack, this is Finn, Ika Hapala and Jake Sturgis. Meanwhile, Hutu is onto pit road, so he's making his first pit stop of the day here. So he will relinquish that race lead for the time being to Max Delorco in this race. Delorco stays out for at least another lap, but the Team Redline driver of Gregor Hutu going to make his first pit stop of the day. It's a very slippery pit road here into his box, and now he's going to get 4 fresh tyres. He will top up with gas as well, and he is going to come out onto the racetrack once again. He is going to, any moment, now he's out and away. He will go past the safety car, 45 miles an hour. Now he can go back onto the racetrack. It's a wide apex now. You're seeing on the outside of the cones. Now he can dart in, almost losing it there as he works himself through turn number 1. But Gregor Hutu, importantly, is into clean air, and he has got himself a big gap, actually. He's ahead of Martin Cronke, so Hutu's still only down into the 3rd position.
So Gregor Hutu slots into the 3rd position. Looks like he's about, I'm thinking about 5 seconds behind Hugo here. But again, now remember Hugo and Max they're on lighter fuel now, so remains to be seen now what kind of lap times Gregor Hutu is going to turn.
Very quickly, we'd like to say a very quick thank you, first of all, to Team Redline for World Championship tipping. For more information, head over to teamredline.co.uk/tipping and make your choices for who you think is going to win every round of the World Championship Series. Also to iRacing.com, for those of you who are new to iRacing, head over to iRacing.com to get yourself half price off your first year's membership, and also to our friends over at ETV as well, etv-eplay.net. Meanwhile, we expect Max Delorco to come onto pit road in perhaps the next 2 or 3 laps. We're keeping an eye on him right now as he works himself out of Sunset Bend once again. Does he make that dart onto pit road? No, he doesn't. One other car does, however, and it does look as though that yellow car was Hal Pino. He's on pit road making a pit stop. He's currently scored 1 lap down already, so we're not sure whether that's truly strategic or whether he's just going to top up with fuel. He's going to get himself fresh tyres as well. Delorco is your race leader. He is sideways there. He's off the racetrack. Hugo Luis going to be very close. He almost runs into him as they work themselves through turn number 3 and 4. Delorco there, very close there to pulling that car into the wall. He will keep the race lead for the time being, but Hugo Luis in that second position now, very close as they come down into the hairpin once again. Marius.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at what exactly has happened, as Delorco seems to have lost it in the second turn of the track. Let's see if we can get a replay there from Joni Bäckman, who's doing the cameras here. And so we're taking a look at Delorco comes out of the last turn. Everything looking good. He is the race leader going across the line, starting his 20th lap of the race. Still got plenty of laps to go, so first turn looking tidy here, avoiding the grass and the sand on the right side. And then he's braking for the second turn. He's just clipped the grass on the brakes. He's just clipped that with, I'd say, 10% of the tire there, but that's all it takes. He's putting the car sideways on the braking, sliding into the grass, and then slowly recovering out of that. And Hugo is right behind him then again. And it just shows again, that's been easily 3 to 4 seconds there. Just such a tiny mistake, and that can cost you so much positions if you're in a battle. And Max Delorco is remotely driving against the likes Krönke, Michaels, Harpala, and he of course wants to take the third position if he's really too stopping, but I think if he keeps doing mistakes like that, it's just going to make it harder and harder.
You say that he's on a two-stop strategy. He's working himself now on lap number 21 of this race. He needs to get himself to lap number 26 to be sure of doing a one-stop strategy. And Paul, he's not that far away. 5 laps he is now away from being able to do this race on 1 more tank of fuel. So for Max Delorco, this could be a legitimate second place finish here in this race. Of course, what both himself and Louis did that last lap, they both lost time because of the fact that, you know, that Luis had to check up quite a lot, and the fact that you had Delorco spinning. Who two gained right there, probably another 1.5 seconds.
Well, and yeah, I mean, if he can make it to a one-stop strategy, this might be advantageous to him. But of course, if Max Delorco does come out with another half a lap worth of gas, he's going to be significantly slower. And let's not forget Hutu back there, who's back on the gas. Looks like he certainly is closing. Last lap 93, or I'm sorry, 133.761. Yeah, I'm sorry, 133.529 rather to Max Delorco's
134.6.
134.6, yes, 134.6. Of course, that sort of incorporates the last mistake too. So yeah, if he can make it to 26, make it through the rest of the lap, perhaps he will be able to make himself a good showing here. But there are the cars that are much faster than him if he's going to be taking that much gas.
And he's now on to lap number 22 in this race, so with every lap it gets closer to the fact he might be able to do it on 1 more tank of fuel. Max Delorco right now in that 52 car is leading the way once again in the iRacing.com World Championship Series here on GlacierTV. Will Vincent, Paul Jenkins, Marius, Golombeck in the ball, and it looks as though that Jake Sturgis has been able to get himself past Ika Harpala that last lap as well, to move Jake Sturgis now up into the 6th position in this race. It does look as though Ika Harpala right now is starting to struggle in that car just a little bit. Ati Kirchhoff now also up into the 8th position on the racetrack, and your first pro driver to race in the 2013 World Championship Series, Marius, Antoine Hegelin, is running in a solid top 10 in that 9th position.
Yeah, and that's really more than solid. He is the only pro driver been able to qualify for this race. Qualified 7th, still running 9th, and he's got the likes of Ati Kirchhoff and Ilka Harpala right ahead of him, together with Jake Sturgis, 3 of the most experienced drivers in this series, that's for sure. And he's still doing a good job at just following these guys. And solid top 10, you said it. And it looks like with 7 seconds to Matthias Egger, he's got a really good chance of bringing this home here.
So, your standings as it stands right now, Max Delorco leads away by 1.2 seconds over Hugo Luis as he comes down into Sunset Bend, once again taking a very wide apex. Will he come down onto pit road this time by? Yes, he will. And if Max Delorco comes down to make his first pit stop of the day in that number 52 car, now we need to get our calculators out. We need to see just how much fuel that number 52 car, the Ferrari car, will take as he comes down 45 miles an hour on pit road. He relinquishes the rate lead for the time being to Hugo Luis into his pit box there. 4 fresh tyres going onto his car. The jacks come off now. How much more is he putting in that car? It looks as though it's going to be a pretty long stop there for Delorco. So he might then transfer onto a one-stop strategy, learning from his mistakes from last race. Delorco will come back out onto the racetrack, and where's he going to feed back in? It looks as though that Paul Ilbrink is just about going to breeze past him. He's behind Daniel Lopez, and Max Delorco will come out, we believe, in the 11th position there, just ahead of Paul Ilbrink.
And Ilbrink does have the momentum, and he's... Delorco almost loses it. Ilbrink almost hits him. Amazing that Delorco managed to save that, but Ilbrink very, very quick on his toes to slow that car down and not hit Delorco. But he's going to be much faster here through this section, and I believe he's going to go ahead and take a position.
Paul Ilbrink needs to get past Delorco at this stage of the race, because right now Ilbrink on less fuel, he will be able to have a straight line advantage over the number 52 car of Max Delorco, who also have the advantage in time-wise as well. But Paul Ilbrink in that Steel Series car battling right now for the 11th position on the racetrack. Delorco needs to warm his tyres up. He needs to get going. He cannot afford to sit behind Paul Ilbrink at this stage of the race if he wants to try and keep that position over the likes of Hugo Luis and Martin Conte, Stephen Michaels. But you have to say, even though he learned from his mistakes last time out at Phillip Island, Marius, where he could have transferred to the one stop and didn't, today he does. Realistically, however, he probably will only just about get onto the podium if everything works out for him.
Yeah, it's possible. That's the least to say. I mean,
as Ilbrink goes past Ilbrink now up into the 11th position on the racetrack. Delorco very sideways there from Sunset Bend. Team were even and also closing him down, but Marius, carry on.
Yeah, that's bringing me right back to the discussion. I mean, if Delorco keeps fighting with Ilbrink like that, keeps making mistakes, keeps losing time, it's not really going to help his middle stint here. So he's actually wanting a very free track here to make use of the second of the two-stop strategy, just like we've seen with Gregor. He's just come out of the pits, putting in a couple of fast lap times. That's what you want to do. That's what you need to do to make the two-stop work. And that's why it's maybe not the favorite of all drivers here. So Stephen Michaels still got about, let's say, 28 seconds ahead of, 38 seconds ahead of Max Delorco. And that should be enough for a pit stop already. So Stephen Michaels probably not staying out much longer, thinking about 4 to 5 more laps. And then it's the question of if these 4 to 5 laps will make the cut for Delorco already, or if the race goes on between these guys. And 3 seconds ahead of Michaels is Martin Krönke, and he's also not really safe on the podium.
Checking in, meanwhile, on the battle for the 6th and 7th position on the racetracks, Ika Harpala and Axel Kirchhoff. We've also got Antoine Hegelin involved in that battle right now as well. And Antoine needs to put pressure on Antoine as they work themselves down into turn number 1. Once again, he looks down to the inside and then slots himself back into line as they work themselves now down into turn number 2 onto the racetrack. And I tell you what though, for Kirchhoff, he has got Hegelin pushing him really, really hard right now, Paul. And this is not the actual Kirchhoff we've seen in the first 5 rounds in this championship.
No, absolutely not. Struggling a little bit with the car here, and really just trying to keep the thing under him, and under intense pressure now from Antoine and Matthias behind him. So it's getting pretty intense here in the middle portion of the pack between Harpala, Kirchhoff, and Hegelin. And Hegelin is really trying to work his way towards getting around Kirchhoff, just looking for any sort of opening. But with Eger behind there, or rather Hegelin behind there, Kirchhoff is feeling the pressure. This is where you can't afford to make any kind of mistake at all. As it looks like Hegelin just kind of got loose there and is going to lose a little bit of ground.
He's going to lose a little bit of ground indeed there, and this is going to allow Axel Kirchhoff now to try and close that gap back up to Ika Harpala. Harpala there in the Orion Racing Team car, being closed down by the Team Redline car of Axel Kirchhoff, the 11 on the 5 car, as they work themselves down towards Sunset Bend, turn number 17 once again. We do think that the pit stop window will be open for one-stop cars in the next lap or so they will be able to come down and make their one-stop of the race. To give you an update on pit stop time so far, the 2 that are important, Gregor Hushu did a 6.5 second pit stop, so he clearly is on a 2-stop race. Max Delorco did a 10.7 pit stop, Marius. So it does look as though he has transferred onto that one-stop strategy.
Yeah, he's on the one-stop strategy, it looks like, and we've often got these tracks where you think about making a two-stop just to being aggressive, and yeah, for Gregor Huttu it has worked out, but we may not forget Hugo Lewis had a little incident with his teammate in the last turn, and that has both cost him and Krönke about 5 seconds. He's made another mistake, so overall he's probably, he could be 10 seconds ahead at the pit stop, and then he would have 10 seconds advantage over Gregor Huttu, and Gregor Huttu would have about 8 laps to go, 7 laps to go, and he would be in the need of making up 10 seconds in these 8 laps, and by the pace he's been running, that could be very well possible, and he's only got 4.5 right now, so it looks like a very much strategic favor for Huttu here, but the buts and ifs, it could be possible if you had a perfect race on a one-stop to win it on a one-stop. And that just shows that how close the strategy are. And if you have a problem on a two-stop, if you run into traffic, if you do a little mistake and spin and then come out in traffic, it's pretty much all over. And that's not what you need to afford. And on such a long race, we're talking about 1.5 hours here, it can always happen that you just pit out and hit another car which is 1 lap behind, and you're stuck for a lap. That can always happen, costing you 2 tenths, costing you a second, costing you 2 seconds. That can always happen, and that's these 2 seconds which you need to avoid to bring home a win.
Meanwhile, Hugo Lewis now has passed the halfway point of this race, working now on lap 27 of 52 here at Sebring International Raceway. His last lap was a 1:32.693. Compare that to Huttu's 1:32.811. So at this stage of the race, Hugo Lewis is actually faster than Gregor Huttu. So we could be setting ourselves up for a grandstand finish once again here in the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series presented by GlacierTV. Martin Kroenke still running himself in the 3rd position in the race. Stephen Michaels, Paul, still running in that 4th position, and Jake Sturgis in 5th. It is so good to see these drivers for his 2nd race in a row doing standout drives in this series.
Stephen Michaels putting on the drive of his career at the moment right now. Excellent pace. Showing superb car control, and it's paying off in a 4th position for him so far. So if he can keep up this nice smooth driving, I think we're going to see a great result for Stephen Michaels.
In fact, we're going to go on board with Stephen Michaels as he works himself down to Sunset Bend once again. Right now, he's doing about 180 plus miles an hour as he comes down into Sunset Bend. 183 miles an hour on the apex, taking a wide entry in, avoiding those bumps on the inside line. Take a different line on these cars than you were doing GT cars. Coming past the start-finish line, about 175 miles an hour already as he heads itself down under the Audi bridge, down into turn number 1 on the racetrack. Takes it about 160 miles an hour on the apex before he slides it into turn number 2, down to about 90 miles an hour now, then flicks it to the right, then to the left once again, down to about 90 miles an hour, and then he's picking up speed once again. And I tell you what, right now, he is starting to close down on Martin Kroenke as well. Kroenke working himself through a little bit of lap traffic. That is Wes Richards going very slowly there to allow also Stephen Michaels to go past him. But Michaels, you have to say, Marius, putting on a standout drive, and he's got a 6-second gap over Jake Sturgis.
Yeah, he's got a 6-second gap over Jake Sturgis, that's correct. And Sturgis and Kirchhoff are both drivers in the top 5 in the championship. So these are the drivers trying to collect much points here, and by the looks of it, I mean, 5th and 7th for Sturgis and Kirchhoff isn't particularly bad, so they will still collect a lot of points, but I guess they just want a little bit more than that, especially since Kirchhoff, we've talked about it, is not just battling with Harpala, but also with Michelin.
Meanwhile, Timo Raven down to the inside. He will make the pass there on Max DeLorca. You saw it on your screens, a battle for the 12th and 13th positions on the racetrack, and it does look as though right now Max DeLorca is struggling for race pace. And I have to say, Paul, perhaps the fact that he switched from that 2 to that 1-stop strategy, he might not have tested out that car on heavier fuel, and right now he's struggling. Of course, Timo Raven right now is on a much lower fuel than Max DeLorca is, but DeLorca at this stage of the race really is struggling.
Absolutely, and we saw this when he came out of the pits. That car balance is way off from what DeLorca was expecting when he first came out of the pits, and we almost saw a shunt between him and Ilbrink when Ilbrink was right behind him. So the car is certainly within the last pit stop taken on some sort of characteristic that DeLorca was struggling to come to terms with, and it looks like the car's just gotten loose on him. It may be because of the massive amount of weight in the back because of the fuel. But possibilities also is perhaps Del Orco may have made an adjustment to that car that didn't quite work out the way it is. But we'll have to keep an eye and see if that car comes back to him towards the end of the race, because we saw that when on light field the car was wickedly fast.
Meanwhile, we'll keep an eye out on Hugo Luis. We expect him to come down onto pit road either this lap or next lap, work himself down into Le Mans corner, turn number 16, once again using a lot of that curb there on the exit of the corner as he now comes down the long back straightaway down into Sunset Bend once again. Right now, he has a 4.9 second advantage over Gregor Hutu in the battle for the first position. He is gapping Hutu at the rate of about 4 times per second lap. He stays out for one more lap, going a little bit wide there actually, out of Sunset Bend. This time by, it's a 1 minute 52.570, perhaps going wide in that final corner, cost him a couple attempts. But Hutu, to give you confirmation on his time as well, last time did a 1 minute 32.6. So Hutu is starting to close that gap on pure pace as well. And we expect to say Luis to come onto pit road. We think next time by, he has Galpino ahead of him. He will probably move out of the way, coming out of the hairpin. And Marius, for Luis, this is that critical stage of the race right now. He has to hit every apex coming onto his pit box, and then for the first 2-3 laps, every apex coming out of pit road as well.
Yeah, you can't say he isn't trying, that's for sure. He's extended the gap from 4.5 to 5 seconds in just about 5 laps, so not that much, but you have to take every glimpse and you have to take every chance to extend your gap. With 5 seconds of a gap, he will pit this lap, at least that's what we're thinking. He will have about 6 to 7 laps driving before he sees Gregor Hutu again. So 6 or 7 laps for Gregor Hutu to gain time on Lewis to make up these 5 seconds. And also not to forget that Hugo Lewis is taking a little bit longer pit stop, taking about 7-8 more laps fuel, probably making 2 second difference. So it's just about 2.5 to 3 seconds for Gregor Hutu to make up. And the driving qualities, of course, speak for both drivers, but the pace Gregor Hutu has shown in his first stint, it should be well within the range of him to do these 3 seconds, and Luis is in the pit.
So he's going to make his first and only pit stop of the day, relinquishing that race lead for the time being over to Gregor Hutu. I was just doing the math, and if Hutu can push at the way he was doing at the start of this race, then he has this race in the bag. Hugo Luis onto pit road, 45 miles an hour. Antoine Hegelin also made his journey onto pit road. Miguel Martin also onto pit road, as is Stephen Michaels make his one and only pit stop of the day. Sturgill stays out for the time being, so he will go up into a net second position for the time being, but Luis nicely into his pit box. He is now out and away. Martin Kroenke also into his pit box, so he is going to take 4 fresh tyres as well. Stephen Michaels off the jacks. Let's see what happens between Michaels and Martin Kroenke. It does look as though that Kroenke will get out just ahead there, but Michaels very close to the rear of him as they come out of pit road there. It was a 7.8 second there for Hugo Luis, 7.8 seconds on the jacks for him. Gregor Hutu did 6.5 on his first pit stop, so really, Marius, he only lost about a second on pit road. Of course, Hutu's second stop might be a little bit quicker, however.
Yeah, and Gregor has only still got about 3.5 seconds to gain here, so it sounds like much. I mean, it sounds like much for 5 or 6 laps, but we may not forget he's got the lighter car now. He's maybe got the rhythm which Hugo needs for a couple of turns to get back into the car, and that can easily cost him half a second. So if he puts in a couple of good laps, just gets out a decent lap time after another, he has got a pretty good chance of getting out of the pits ahead of Hugo, and that's what he needs to do. It's not enough if he pits out and goes slightly behind Hugo, because Hugo will of course do everything he can to keep Gregor behind him. So all he needs to do is pit out ahead of him, and it looks like a 30-lap pit for the one stop has been in favor of a couple of drivers. So only out from the top 20 drivers: Jake Sturgis, Atze Kirchhoff, Ilke Harpala, Lopez, Ilbrink, and these are the ones not having made a pit stop, and Atze Kirchhoff is still staying out together with Jake Sturgis, so a very heavy car for these two drivers, and that might be enough to put them both quite a bit ahead of Antoine Eagerly.
Having an eye on Stephen Michaels, let's see if he comes onto pit road. No, he doesn't. So Michaels staying out as well. And this confirms the pace of some of these drivers: Atze Kirchhoff, Jake Sturgis and Stephen Michaels. We talked about at the start of the race how Atze Kirchhoff was struggling. And, you know, Jake Sturgis has had a great drive, however. He started this race in the 15th position. He is running right now ahead of Atze Kirchhoff. So that is pure pace right now for Jake Sturgis in that Inex racing car. But for have to say for Kirchhoff, he's still got to push, he's still got to hope that over the next 3 or 4 laps he can try and leapfrog in some way Jake Sturgis. Kirchhoff last time a 1:33.320, compare that to 1 minute 33.175 for Jake Sturgis. You have to say though that Michaels has now come onto pit road, that he's made his one and only pit stop of the day now. This is going to be a key battle though between Jake Sturgis and Atzi Kirchhoff. They're running themselves down the back straightaway once again. We expect Sturgis to come onto pit road this time by. We expect the same for Atzi Kirchhoff. They're going to have to do 45 miles an hour on pit road. They're working themselves now through Sunset Bend once again to put their 32nd lap in the books, and Sturgis comes onto pit road. Will Atzi Kirchhoff follow him? No, he doesn't. Atzi Kirchhoff stays out for yet another lap in this race. So Sturgis, he's got to be careful now, because if Kirchhoff came in at the same time, it would have been very easy. He would have come out ahead. Every lap that Kirchhoff will stay out on the racetrack for, Kirchhoff will probably gain about a second a lap for the time being. So give it 2 laps, and if Sturgis messes up on pit road, then Kirchhoff could leapfrog Sturgis.
Well, and this is a very good point that at this point Kirchhoff wants to keep the car out as long as he can with the lighter fuel. And I mean, it's remarkable that Atzi hasn't made a stop yet. It gives you an idea how much fuel he had on the car to begin with. So perhaps yet another different strategy of being heavy at the start and then lighter at the end. One of the things we could talk about too is not only you know, with pitting. We talked about this a little bit with Indianapolis in the last podcast. You know, more critical than being in the pits is getting in and out of the pits. And we're looking at the times between Gregor Hutu on his pit and Hugo Luis. Hugo Luis is in and out, or rather, Gregor Hutu's in and out was 1:58 and just a little tick over that, 1:58, versus Hugo's in and out lap of over 2 minutes, or right at 2 minutes. So that's 2 seconds, over 2 seconds you've lost just trying to get in and out of the pits. And you know, we're not talking about race speed here, so it's very important that you get in and out of the pits cleanly and quickly, or you're going to lose time on the track.
Atzi Kirchhoff coming down on towards pit road now, so he goes 1 lap longer there than Jake Sturgis. So Kirchhoff now down to 45 miles an hour. Let's see if there's any other takers onto pit road this time by. Indeed, at the moment there isn't, but we're waiting on a couple of other drivers to see whether they make that trip onto pit road. Atzi Kirchhoff, 45 miles an hour. Jake Sturgis should, in theory, get out ahead of him. But Atzi Kirchhoff getting 4 fresh tyres now. He will top up on gas as well. It's going to be a very short stop for him. We expect it to be about 8 seconds. He is out and away already. Let's see where Jake Sturgis is. He's just coming past the start-finish line. I'll tell you what, it will be close between those 2 drivers. Kirchhoff now back into the gas. They come into turn number 1. He will take that inside line, and he's been able to do it. Marius, he's been able to get out ahead of Jake Sturgis in the space of 1 lap.
Well, that's just the magic of pitting, really. I mean, you pit 1 lap later, you're still in the rhythm, you put in 1 good lap, and the other driver has to get back into the rhythm. He has to get out of the pits. Of course, you also have to refuel for 1 lap more, and that's all it takes. I mean, they've just been a second apart, and by making it 1 second difference on the pit stop, Atzi Kirchhoff snatches this position and comes out ahead of Jake Sturgis.
That was Atzi Kirchhoff, remembering he had to get himself back up positions in this race. We'll get confirmation of the gaps very shortly, and I tell you what, it does look as though Atzi Kirchhoff will get himself a good finish in this race after all, after a very bad start to this race. Having a look at gains and losses, Hutu of course up 1 position, Luis up 1 position, Conke down 2 positions, Michaels is where he started, Kirchhoff now running in the 5th position up 4 spots, Sturgis though, Paul, up 9 positions in this race. When you consider the fact also that Eggert is up 12 positions, Delolco up 4 spots from where he started, some good drives for some of these drivers in the mid-pack.
This is a great showing by Sturgis, and even though he is behind Kirchhoff at the moment, it does look like he is going to be losing some ground to Kirchhoff, maybe Kirchhoff a little bit later on the fuel. That heavy start and light finish strategy perhaps paying off. But yeah, very excellent, very good drive by Sturgis, and I think he should be definitely proud of where he's at now. He's just bring it to the finish.
Right now, it does look as though that Hutu will have a net 1.7 second gain over Hugo Luis after he makes his pit stop, unless of course Hutu has any issues with traffic or anything else in the next couple of laps. But Hutu right now working himself on lap number 35 of 52 in this race. He will not be too far away. In fact, he comes on towards pit road this time by, so Hutu is going to make his second and final pit stop of the day. So here he comes, 45 miles an hour. This is the battle for the race lead. Hugo Luis right now is working himself through the S's. Right now, he's going 130 miles an hour down into Le Mans corner as he's working himself now onto the back straightaway. But for Hutu, he is working himself now into his pit box. Nicely in there for the Team Red Line driver. 4 fresh tyres, going to get himself topped up with race gas to get him through himself to the end of the race as well. He is out and away already, and I tell you what, Hugo Luis isn't even out of Sunset Bend yet. Gregor Hutu has got himself a huge lead, Marius.
Yeah, and his pit stop has been absolutely spot on, so it's not just going to make it around 2 or 3 seconds. It looks more like 6 or 7, and we're going to, of course, get an update the next time by, but my bet is on just about 7 seconds between Hutu and Lewis.
Don't forget, keep in contact with us on Twitter all race long. Use the hashtag iRacingWTS. Shout out to Tara Dalberg, also to Rick Savage, Jesper Pedersen, and also to Jimmy Broadbent as well. You can check out his YouTube channel. Just search for Jimmy Broadbent on YouTube. Meanwhile, Ike Hapala battling right now for 8th position on the race track with Antoine Hegelin. And last time by, Hegelin did a 1:35.507. Ike Hapala a 1:34.486. Paul Hapala in that Orion Racing car is closing.
Closing indeed. Very, very fast times here, and within half of a second now of Higlin. So in the next couple of laps, we'll see if he can make a move.
So we are now working ourselves on lap number 36 of 52 here in the 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series from Sebring International Raceway. Will Vincent, Marius, Golombeck and Paul Jenkins in the booth. Unfortunately, our good friend Bun Rothberg is ill today, so not able to come and stay with us for the race. But Hutu now has a lead of about 5 seconds on the racetrack to Hugo Luis in that battle for the first position. Hutu did a 2-stop race. Compare that to Hugo Luis's 1-stop. The gap as they come past the line was actually 6.8 seconds. Martin Kroenke running in that 3rd position. Stephen Michaels in 4th. Ati Kirchhoff in the 5th position. Jake Sturgill 6th. Max Delorco 7th. Antoine Hegelin in 8th. Ike Hapala in 9th. And Matthias Egger rounds out your top 10. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about here, Marius. The first one, remember back into the first 10 laps of this race when Luis almost ran over Martin Kroenke? That cost him 4 seconds. Now, 4 seconds in a stint of a race, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot. That gap right now would have been about 2 seconds on the racetrack, and you could argue if that gap was just 2 seconds between Luis and Hutu, then Luis might have been pushing a lot harder than he'd been doing right now.
Yeah, and remember at that time, we've only been thinking about what will happen, and that might decide the race or might put a blow towards Hugo's strategy. And that's exactly how it's come. I mean, we've been thinking about a little bit less than that still, but 6.5 seconds right now, deduct 4 from that, and you may not forget, Hugo has already been past Gregor and then made the mistake in turn number 7, waving him by and pretty much opening up the race for Gregor. And with the mistake of Martin in the last turn and Hugo almost running into him, Gregor just had nothing else to do but run away from the pack, run away from the front, no cars right behind him, and that's all you need to do. I mean, he's got no pressure coming up from the rear, and pretty much the first 25 laps free, and that's what's built him this lead, and that's what made it this big. Coming by this line, Hugo Luis deducts 2/10 off the gap, makes it 6.6, and we've still got 14 laps to go. Not being too opportunistic here, but there is still a slight chance, and we've still seen a couple of drivers make mistakes here. For example, Andre Böttcher completely losing the car in turn 1. That can still happen to one of the guys, but Hugo Luis has got the gap to the rear and Gregor doesn't.
And of course, if that 4-second gap didn't exist, then this would have been a very close finish to the line between Hutu and Luis. And it does show the difference between a 1 and a 2-stop strategy. There's not a lot in it at all. We are right now looking at that battle between Antoine Hegelin in the number 69 car, currently running in the 8th position on the racetrack, and the number 11 car of Ike Hapala running in the 9th spot on the racetrack right now. But Paul, there's one other driver I want to talk about. In fact, there's 2 drivers. First one being Ati Kirchhoff. At the start of this race, we said that he was down the dumps. His car wasn't behaving the way he wanted it to be. He went longer than pretty much anyone else on fuel, He managed to leapfrog Jake Sturgis. He's now back into a top 5 position, and he's not that far away from Stephen Michaels in 4th and lapping faster than him right now.
Well, it's good to see that the car came in when he needed it to, and I think that might be part of the reason why he chose this sort of strategy for the race, is because the car wasn't as fast as he wanted it to be and was not working the way he needed it to be. So it certainly illustrates that with a car that is not nearly or not as fast as your competition, you can still make up spots on strategy. So lesson to all you home racers at home: if your car is not the fastest one on the track, don't lose hope. You can still get a good finish, and that's exactly what we're seeing here with Kirchhoff. An excellent position here in 5th, and solidly so. The car seems to be operating well. 1:33.8, 4:41 rather the last lap. So the speed is in the car. He's driving smooth, and I think this is he's picked a good time to have that car get under him.
And he's not too far away from Martin Cronkite in that 3rd position as well. Hugo Louise lost about 1 second there due to a lapped car down into turn number 2. I'm sure race control might take a little bit of a look at that after the race. However, let's talk about Max Delorco as well, Paul, because once again he tries the alternative strategy, and for him today, he did lose that race all by himself. He was driving very, very hard on that car, and before he had that incident, which almost took himself out and Hugo Louise, then he also had that incident where he got himself sideways coming out of pit road and lost himself another 2-3 seconds. He could have been battling for the top 5 positions here today.
I do believe so. Max is a very aggressive driver, and I think he had a little bit of frustration when he got out of the pits and the car was not operating properly. It's a fine line between trying to make up space and not. And you see, if you try too hard, you're just going to go backwards. And this is something where you need to think about when you're in the car. Where did my handling go? What do I have to do to get the car back under me? And in a situation like Delorco, where if you keep pushing the car harder and harder, the tires are just going to go further and further away from you. So you have to do opposite what your brain thinks about. I've got to push harder to make up more space, when in reality the better solution may be to actually slow down a little bit, get your wits about you, figure out what the car is trying to tell you, and make the appropriate adjustments, then get on it.
To give you an update on retirees from this race, for those of you who are just joining us, Ricky Alautono is out of the race. Mo Garfido, Piero Brizzo, Jesper Pedersen, Jason Lover, they were all out of the race very early on due to an incident before turn number 1. We didn't show it on the replay. Pablo Lopez scored multiple laps down. Fulvio Barozzini out of the race. Yudan Narumi out of the race. Andre Borchi, Christian Lorenz, Yoni Tamala out of the race, as are Blake Townley and Luke McLean. And Marius, that's really disappointing for McLean, because he's lost himself now that streak of podiums at Sebring. This was always one track where he could really get himself a good finish.
Yeah, but you have to be honest, it would already be pretty hard for him today, as he's only starting 8th, and out of the 7 guys ahead of him, all except for Bertia and Barozzini are still running. Antoine Aguilin probably a little bit slower than him, so he could have been very close to the top 5 at least. But taking a look at his teammate Kirchhoff, Jake Sturgis, Max Delorco, they wouldn't have made it too easy for him, that's for sure.
And a number of drivers have done 2-stop strategies here today. Of course, we talked about Hootie doing that. Max Delorco was on a 2-stopper, but then went to a 1-stop. Enzo Benito is doing a 2-stop strategy. He's the only other 2-stopper on the lead lap right now. Ben Cornett has done 3 stops here today. Miguel Martin has done 2 stops, and Cattell has done 2 stops as well. But they have currently scored 1 lap down. We have a total of 16 cars scored on the lead lap. You have to say though, Paul, that attrition is a lot higher here today than we've seen at other races so far in the season. We have a total of 13 cars out of the race here today?
It is remarkable, but when you think about how technical and difficult this track is on man and equipment, you'd expect to see some. I don't think there is a smooth portion on this track anywhere, and it really just sort of beats the car around and really messes with the ability to be precise. And so if you've got a car with low downforce and a tighter spring package, you may find yourself skittering around the track a lot. And we've seen a couple of these cars put a tire off onto the grass or onto the dust, and it's very unforgiving. You do that with this car, and it's just going to zip right out from under you. And we've seen that a couple of times.
We're keeping an eye out on this battle for the 8th and 9th positions on the racetrack, Marius. This is between the 9th place driver, the Orion Racing Team driver of Iker Hapala, and Antoine Hegelin in the number 69 car. Before we go any further, a big shout out to Hegelin for not only getting this car into that race in the Apex Racing League car, but also he's had himself a top 10 run pretty much all race long here. The only pro driver this season to get into a World Championship Series race, running in the top 10 and resisting huge amounts of pressure from Iker Hapala behind him.
Yeah, and I think a couple of these drivers thinking about, I mean, we've had 7 or 8 pro drivers try out here, and we've had Higelin in the 5th position on the start, Olli Parkala in 7, Ricardo Castro in 10, and Alex Simpson in 12, and these have only been the 4 best, and I'm pretty sure they are all thinking now, man, if I would have got this spot, what would I have done? And I think none of them would have thought better than 8th place, to be honest, and so far a great race by Higelin, and he's been completely fulfilling the role of just taking a look in the Drivers' World Championship Series, and he's done a little more than that. Top 10, brilliant results for him.
Ahead, Atsi Kirchhoff is now catching up to the rear of Stephen Michaels in the battle for the 4th position on the racetrack. Kirchhoff right now is scored about 8 tenths of a second behind Stephen Michaels, and this has kind of lost him a little bit of momentum and has allowed Martin Kroenke, for the time being at least, to secure that 3rd position in the race. So right now, it's Redline driver first, Gregor Hutu, my 3D driver, Hugo Luis in 2nd, my 3D driver, Martin Kroenke in 3rd. Then you have Stephen Michaels in the 4th position, doing a tremendous drive. You could almost say, in fact, he's parted ways with MMM these past couple of weeks. It's actually been a blessing to his sim racing career. And then Atsi Kirchhoff in that 5th position, closing him down. But Paul, Kirchhoff into that dirt, yeah, again, he's just not been able to run that car in traffic pretty much all day long.
It does seem to be a recurring theme with Atsi. He'll close in and the car will just pick up some sort of push, and he'll have to try and fight the car to try and get a little closer, and falls back. So for all the speed that Atsi has, unfortunately the handling doesn't seem to be much for him right now, but even considering that, still a 5th place position with him, a spectacular drive for him. And I'm going to guess that Atsi is on a little lower of a downforce package, looking at the way that car is sliding around, but is very, very quick on the straights. So with Atsi, if he can just try and get that car close enough without losing all the performance, he'd be able to make these passes. But you know, that's the nature of the beast. If you've got a car that you want to go fast on a low downforce package, you've got to pay the price when you close in.
I think more than downforce on this race, though, Marius, with the fact that we know that so many of these drivers run very, very similar downforce settings. You've got 2 different parts of this racetrack. You've got your standard tarmac section, and then you also have that concrete section. And it does look as though that in sector 2, Atsi Kirchhoff is clearly faster. But as soon as they get themselves into sector number 3, and they change from tarmac to concrete, it does look as though at that portion of the racetrack, Stephen Michaels is clearly faster, and he holds that momentum incredibly well at Le Mans corner, and also through the 1st sector of this racetrack, turn number 1, to defend that position as well.
Yeah, and you said it, the setups overall seem to be quite similar, especially on the downforce setting. The drivers all have got similar top speed in their cars, so there's not going to be too much of a difference in the setup. However, there are still fine-tunable values, a Formula 1 car, of course, being the highly developed car here. So you've got a couple of values in the suspension, a couple of aero values, which you can all adjust together with the differential to make the setup so much different to another. It doesn't look that different, but it can give you the advantage in certain parts. And in the parts you wanted, especially showing towards Stephen Michaels, it's just enough to keep 1 second of a gap to stay ahead, to keep a safe distance to the guy behind you, and to bring this home. And if the driver is comfortable with the setup, we're talking about 52 laps racing, 1.5 hours here, it's worth quite a lot.
Meanwhile, it does look as though that Iker Hapala has been able to get past Antoine Hegelin for the time being. Hegelin, it does look as though he made a mistake while trying to get past Iker Hapala, and is now falling down into that 9th position in that number 69 Apex Racing League number 69 car. However, still a good top 10 finish for him if he can hold it to the end of this race. Less than 10 laps to go in the 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series here from Sebring International Raceway. You've got Will Vincent, you've got Marius Golombeck and Paul Jenkins bringing these cars home. Atsi Kirchhoff continues to close in in the battle for the 4th position on the racetrack right now. I tell you what as well, you've got yourself an interesting battle starting to develop between Matthias Egger in the number 8 car and Daniel Lopez as well. Egger last time by a 1:33.622. He's running pretty much identical lap times right now to Daniel Lopez, Paul, but Lopez has been a little bit faster in previous laps, and he's trying to close that gap down, try and get himself up into the top 10.
But he is running out of time to do so. If he's gonna have any hope of getting that 10th position, he's gonna have to step on it, and he's gonna have to hope for Egger making a mistake here. As it is, only less than 2 tenths of a second faster than Egger per lap here. So, unless something happens with Egger, I don't think that Lopez is going to be able to close that distance in that short of time.
So into the closing stages of this race right now, and let's turn our attention back, Marius, to Gregor Hutto, because he has been able to stretch out that lead those last couple of laps as well. It does look as though that Luis has decided to settle for that 2nd position. He's not driving that car the way we saw it earlier on in that race, hitting every apex as if there's, it's the last apex of the race. He is now 7.7 seconds behind Hutto. You have to say, however, that whilst Luis made mistakes and had unfortunate incidences with both Cronke early on in the race and also Delorco, which cost him time without him even really being the person involved, Hutto has drove a flawless race once again.
Yeah, he has done, and on a track like Sebring, it's just more important than on any other track, if it really is. So, we've talked about it earlier. As soon as Martin did the mistake in the last turn and Gregor got waved by pretty much, he's just had a free track ahead of him for 20, 25, 30 laps. And until his first pit stop, he's already created quite a gap, and we were already thinking that is over from that point. But Hugo fought back at that point. He's just not given up and tried to see where it goes. It can still happen to all of the drivers. A little mistake, a little bit over the grass, and 5 seconds are gone just like that. So he kept on driving, he kept on pushing. He came out of the pits, still looking good, but as soon as Gregor did his 2nd pit stop, then he came out flying past, gaining about 1.5 seconds per lap. Then it's been pretty much over. Flawless race. Safe to say by Gregor, that's for sure, but also by Hugo, avoiding these little mistakes. Could have, of course, given him the race win. We can't really think about that right now. We can't really do anything more than speculate, but without these mistakes, you can win the race, and you cannot afford mistakes like that in reverse. If you have mistakes like that, there's literally nothing you can do then settle for 2nd place.
I tell you what, the battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th positions on the racetrack, that is starting to pop up again. Mainly because of the fact that Martin Cronke, I thought he was a lap car for a moment there. Martin Cronke is fallen into the clutches of Stefan Michaels just a little bit. And Atsi Kirchhoff still right there as well. These 3 drivers, as they come past the start finish line once again, they are separated by less than 2.5 seconds on the racetrack. Kirchhoff fell back just a little bit that last time by to make it about a 3.4 second gap between these 2 drivers. But as Kirchhoff goes very wide there out of turn number 1, getting his car sideways there, that's going to cost him quite dramatically. But Michaels is now knocking on the door full of a podium finish here, and it looks like Cronke, on these last couple of laps, he just hasn't got the tyre grip left in that number 6 Micro ID car.
We mentioned right towards the beginning of the race, Cronke started having some issues with his steering, and it looks like maybe that is certainly affecting him here in the later stages of the race. Very hard to fight a car that's not operating properly. So it looks like Michaels is really just, as long as he can keep this pace up and just wait for Cronke to make another mistake, I think you're right. I think we might be seeing Stephen Michaels stepping on that 3rd place podium finish. So smelling the blood in the water here is Michaels, and waiting and seeing if he can make a move.
And of course, we heard earlier on in the race that we got word from the Micro ID pit team that Martin Cronke has had issues with his force feedback power steering, so he's not been able to get that car working the way he was doing in practice, in qualifying, in the warm-up session, Marius. So for Cronke right now, he's been driving a car which has been completely different to him in this race, and in the latter stages, low fuel, 1 tyres, then for Cronke, he is having to hold on right now.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's been what has caused his early mistake. They almost taken out Hugo Lewis and Stephen Michaels in the process. So it just took him a couple of laps, and I can definitely understand that, to get used to that. having this car without power steering, not knowing when it's going to go sideways, when it's going to kill you on the turn exit, literally, it's going to be incredibly different. And I hope we can have a word with him after the race so he can just describe how difficult it really has been to him. 0.6 seconds, in fact, between Krönke and Michaels here, and we've only got 4 laps to go. You see, Michaels doesn't particularly have much time, but of course also behind these two, Atsi not really out of contention, and I've just managed to have a word with Ray Mooney there, the former Pro Series driver and LFS Pro. He's been thinking about that. Atsi has got his girlfriend in the back, just giving him a little massage maybe, just trying to make him quicker, and 1 second from Kirchhoff to Michaels. Safe to say he's not out of this podium contention.
And a couple of fans on Twitter and on the live stream chat have been talking about that cone as well, which lines the racetrack. And you know, it's funny about Sebring, you know, normally have 100 metre boards, 200 metre boards, 300 metre boards. Here, you have a cone which marks the turning point. And Shannon Whitmore has been talking about how, you know, it's a funny thing with iRacing. All the drivers keep on talking about it. And there's actually a couple of drivers saying we need to have a week 13 competition for that. And I think it'll be pretty fun, actually. But meanwhile, Stephen Michaels continues to close right now. We will try and get word from Martin Krönke after this race. And on a track like this, Paul, you could argue that of any of the tracks in the World Championship Series where you need to have your steering working perfectly, this has got to be close to the top of it. And for Krönke right now, he really is having to drive his heart out just to keep in that third position.
Well, I've had this happen to me before where the force feedback in your steering will quit, and you get so used to the feel of the car, you don't realize how important it is to understand a track, especially a place like Sebring where it's so bumpy, where you can feel the traction coming and going, and it really gives you an idea about just how far towards the end you are. Without that information being fed to you, it's very, very easy to overdrive the car and overdrive the corners. And we may be seeing that a little bit, where you see where Krönke's going a little bit wide, and he's a little bit loose here and there, just overdriving corners. But without that feedback, it's really, really difficult to gauge what exactly the car is doing.
So we've got about less than 5 laps left to go in this race. To run through your top 10, Gregor Hutu is your race leader. That gap is now up to 7.9 seconds. 7.4 seconds actually, because Hutu had a slow lap. Lost himself half a second that last time by in the battle for the race team between himself and Hugo Luis. In the third position is still Martin Krönke, battling hard with Stephen Michaels. The gap between those two drivers is right now about 5/10 of a second on the racetrack. It looks as though the Atsi has faded for the time being. He is 1.5 seconds back from that battle for third and fourth in the 5th position. Sergio still in 6th, Max Delorque in 7th, Eka Hapada in 8th, Antoine Hegling in 9th. Matthias Egger rounds out your top 10. A total of 14 cars still scored on the lead lap. And you have to say, Marius, that for Hutu right now, he's got himself 2 laps left to go at the line. And he hasn't put a foot wrong at all. There's a reason why people call him the world's fastest alien.
Yeah, and racing drivers often say, as soon as you're in the zone, don't do anything to change it. And don't even go back to 90%. Go down and take it easy a little bit. You might want to shift a little bit early, you might want to brake a little bit early, but anything going further than that is probably even danger to you. As soon as you're in the zone, you get out of the pits, for example, do 3 or 4 laps, you're back in the zone, you know what you're doing, don't change it. And that's exactly what he's been doing. He's been losing a couple of hundredths, a couple of tenths to Hugo Luis, all absolutely irrelevant, as it's still 7.5 seconds, and he's got 2 laps to go, just cross the line, and I'm pretty sure he's just going to bring this one home and secure this victory and another 50 points towards the championship.
And it looks as though, Paul, that Atsi Kirchhoff nearly looped it.
Yeah, a couple of turns ago, Atsi was coming out, and the car stepped out really, really badly on him. He got about a 45-degree angle to the track. A spectacular save by Atsi to keep that car under him, but pretty much erases any hope for him to catch up to Stephen Michaels.
So, for Gregor Hutu, he has himself now a lap and a half left to go in this race. He has been the dominant force once again in the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. Let's not forget, he came into this race with a 45-point lead over Hugo Luis after Luis's incident at Phillip Island just 2 weeks ago. That psychological mindset that I talked about after that race, it really has worked for Hutu. He's been able to get himself to the race lead. Don't forget, He started this race in the 3rd position here. He was so in the 2nd position. He was able to get past Martin Kroenke on the 2nd lap of this race to get himself to that race lead. He was battling straight from those lights going out here, working himself down the back straight once again. He'll come down into Sunset Bend, and then he will have one more lap left to go in this race. It really has been a tremendous drive for Hutu once again in that Team Redline car, as he hopes to get another 5-point advantage over Hugo Luis in that battle for the championship, taking that total up to 50 points, which, ladies and gentlemen, is a full race win gap in the championship. So for Hutu, that will be incredibly important. Meanwhile, we're going to keep our attention momentarily with Martin Kroenke and Stephen Michaels as they work themselves down into Sunset Bend once again. Kroenke is battling with all he has to try and get himself to that 3rd position. Luke McLean, don't forget, he was the one who finished on the podium the last 3 years here at Sebring. Today, he comes home in the 23rd position. He's currently scored 17 laps down and out of the race. So could it be Stephen Michaels taking that non-top team position away from Martin Kroenke in the last lap of the race? That gap is now down to less than 5 tenths of a second. Stephen Michaels really is pushing as they head it up into the hairpin once again. Michaels doing about 180 miles an hour into the braking zone of the corner, 183. And Martin Kroenke, it looks as though that he is struggling in the last lap of this race. He's going to stay with them for just a couple more corners as they work themselves now down into Cunningham Corner once again for the final time of this race. Stephen Michaels having his standout drive in the iRacing.com World Championship Series. He complained to us at the start of the season that he doesn't get enough airtime. I'll tell you what, today he has got all the airtime he needs because he's deserved it with a solid 4th place finish. Actually, Kirchhoff really has made it, but for Gregor Hutu, he comes out of the final corner. He is going to take victory in this 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. Hugo Luis will come home in a deserved 2nd place finish there after starting this race in the 3rd position. But for Kroenke and Michaels, it will not come down to the final corner unless Kroenke makes a monumental mistake. Coming down into Sunset Bend for these 2 drivers one more time, and it looks as though that Martin Kroenke is just about going to find a way, taking 3rd place away. Stephen Michaels will come home in a well-deserved 4th place finish. Atzi Kirchhoff will come home in 5th. Jake Sturgis in the 6th position. Max DeLorco now working himself out of Sunset Bend. He will take away the 7th position in this race after starting it outside the top 10 once again. Ika Hapana will come home in the 8th position, and he's got Ben Corner ahead of him. A lapped car there. Antoine Hegling will come home in the 9th position. Then Matthias Egger will round out your top 10. And Marius, you're gonna have to say today, Hutu dominant, but what a drive by Michaels, what a drive by Antoine Hegling.
Yeah, definitely a good race by both Gregor Hutu and Hugo Luis. I'm not sure if I would have been so calm after something like that, and Hugo's just been going on. 6 seconds behind Gregor Hutu, still finished 2nd and takes home viable points towards the championship, and that's very important for him. I mean, even if you see you can't take home 1st, you have to take 2nd, you have to take the 40 points, and you have to take them and add them to the towards the championship. But you said it, Martin and Stephen, a great race by both, and especially when Martin really was driving without the force feedback here, that's just adding a whole different situation. And Stephen Michaels comes home 3rd, brilliant result for him, as well as Atzi Kirchhoff and Jake Sturgis rounding out the top 6. They've been having a good race, not really perfect qualifying for either one of them. Sturgis only started in 15th and he came home 6th, so still a great race for both.
When you talk about the drivers that really deserve a great mention here, of course, Gregor Hutu, you know, you can't stop a Gregor Hutu. You can only hope to contain him. But Antoine Hegling, the pro driver, a 9th place finish. What a solid run by him. I mean, just doggedly driving that car all day long, keeping it clean, and the result is a top 10.
And
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, shut up, Marius. I'm just joking. I love you. Carry on.
No, I don't want to now.
I tell you what, though,
I forgot what I want to say anyway.
For Gregor Hutu, he takes home another victory in the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series in a time of 1 hour, 21 minutes, 37.025 seconds. He will take that victory by 6.5 seconds over Hugo Luis. In third place, Martin Kroenke. Fourth, Stephen Michaels. Fifth, Atzi Kirchhoff. Sixth, Jake Sturgis. Seventh is Max Salorco. Eighth is Ika Parla. Ninth, give a shout out to all the pro drivers. Antoine Hegling scoring a top 10 in that number 69 car. Matthias Egger coming home in the top 10. Daniel Lopez 11th, Paul Ilbrink in 12th, Timo Even in 13th, and then Dion Burgess, the last of the cars on the lead lap in 14th, Enzo Benito in 15th, Andrews Lecombe in 16th, Miguel Martin 17th, Ben Corner 18th, Wes Richards a deserved 19th place finish for him, and then Marty Patella coming home in the top 20. Rest of the results coming up on your screen momentarily, but Marius, there were a number of drivers that did a two-stop strategy here today. Only one of those drivers was able to get it working perfectly, and that is the world's fastest alien, Gregor Houtu.
Yeah, and I even want to say, I mean, he's been the only one getting it to work at all, and then again, he's been able to work it perfectly. Max Delorco been one of the guys here having a great race, trying out this two-stop strategy, but just with the mistakes he did coming out of the pits, he's lost a couple of seconds, and Paul, I think, well, he's lost about 10 seconds at least, so top 10 has been within reach for him, that's for sure, and just like that he finished 7th, and on the way to that position he's still been struggling, so still could have been a lot worse for him, but under the line, Gregor Houtu, the only one making the two-stop strategy work, and still comes to show alternative strategies have got their style, and they still have got a good chance of working out.
In the meanwhile, however, we are going to talk to your second place driver from this race in what is now the GlacierTV post-race show. Hugo Luis, I know you've got to talk to our friends over at iRacing Brazil in a couple of moments' time, but well done, a second place finish, starting from third on the grid here today. That was one hell of a tough and fun race.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, I was going all over the place. This car on this track is just undrivable. It's I don't know what to say, but qualify was pretty good for what I was expecting, since it's a very tough track to do a hot lap without spinning and all that. And even on my second hot lap, I was able to spin like a boss. So. Good enough, but the start was very cool. The first laps, I noticed that Gregor was on two-stopper, so I tried to overtake him as soon as possible. But for some reason, after the new build, I can't hear the other cars, so that's quite distracting. And I kept missing the braking zones and all that, and I've lost quite a good time, and that didn't help at all for my result. But I'm glad I could finish this race, especially because I had a disconnect from the last one, so I'm happy.
And after Phillip Island, a nice way to bounce back. We noticed that you had a very close moment in Martin Kroenke coming out of Sunset Bend on about the third lap of the race. When you put the entire thing into perspective, how important was the fact that you lost for about 4 or 5 seconds in that one corner towards the end of the race when you only end up 6.5 seconds behind Houtu? Would it have made a difference if you didn't have a moment there?
Yeah, I basically lost the victory in the first few laps. That moment with Martin, I was like, what? But it was very close.
I'm sure there would probably have been another phrase, but unfortunately it's unbroadcastable. But you still come in the second position. That one-stop strategy really did work for you. Throughout the rest of the race, you were putting on a lot of pressure with Houtu. Did you think that there was any way at all that you would have come out of pit road ahead of him?
Yeah. I had some mistakes on my first stint, and all the time lost in that battle for the lead and the tire lockups, and when Martin nearly spun, I think that I've lost quite a good time there.
Well, congratulations on your second place finish. We'll see you 2 weeks' time over at the Glen. That was Hugo Luis, a great drive by him, getting himself up into the second position. And we're going to hand it over now to Paul Jenkins, and he is stood by with Martin Kroenke.
Thanks, Will. And Martin, starting from the pole, but a very good run for you in spite of some technical difficulties with your car. Take us through what happened there at the start of the race.
The start itself was pretty okay, I think. I had comfortable getaway from the line and got through the first lap pretty nicely. Unfortunately, after lap 3, I lost all FFB into the last corner and had no resistance in the steering wheel at all, and nearly spun, which was also impeding Hugo's race and I think Andre's race as well. So yeah, bit of technical difficulties, but overall the result is still okay for me.
So further on into the race, after that the force feedback failure, were you able to come to grips with what the car was doing, or was that impeding you pretty much through the whole contest?
Well, it was impeding my pace pretty much throughout the race. I was able to hit 32 point low on low fuel during the race, and now my fastest lap overall was a 32.7. So yeah, the pace was not as good as it could have been.
And talk a little bit about your strategy throughout the race. Were you aware of Gregor's going to be on a two-stop race? Was that something that went into your planning?
Yeah, I think I noticed it rather early that Gregor is going for a two-stopper because he was accelerating very, very quickly out of the turns, and I didn't really try to hold him behind because it wouldn't have made any sense. He was so much quicker on low fuel, so yeah. Was pretty obvious that he's going for a two-stopper.
Any information you can bring from this race that might help you here in a couple of weeks?
Not sure. I hope there's a fix coming out by iRacing soon for the feedback issues, because I've had feedback issues now in Phillip Island with 6 laps to go, and now with over 40 laps to go, and yeah, it's not really good to have feedback failures while driving this car on such a difficult track like Sebring.
Indeed. Well, congratulations on the hard-fought third-place finish, Martin, and we'll see you next week, or 2 weeks from now.
I'm going to hand it over now to Marius Golombeck, and you stood by with Atzi Kirchhoff. Kirchhoff coming home in the 5th position in the race here today. Marius, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Will. And 5th in this race puts you right into the 3rd championship spot, and just 3 points ahead of Martin. But towards the race, I think this has been pretty much going spot on.
Yeah, well, everything went spot on in the race, but in qualification, I completely failed my attempts, and it was really hard to put down a proper lap, and I even aborted a lap that was much quicker than my actual lap. So I threw away a top 8, top 7 position in qualification and exchanged it with I believe a 10th or an 11th position. So yeah, that put me in a spot where I need to think hard about my strategy. We knew that a two-stop strategy that was quick, but you had to start in front. So I went for the one stop with a whole lot of fuel and just made the best out of it. And yeah, with the start, I was super careful because yeah, last race was a bad memory. I didn't want to crash out again. And I even had some contacts with drivers that came really, really close. So that was a bit scary, and I lost a couple of positions, which put me back to 11 or 12 at a certain point in the race. And then, yeah, well, I couldn't do anything, actually. I just needed to drive a normal pace. Considering I was very heavy, I was still slowed down a lot by the drivers in front of me. So, yeah, at the end of the first stint, they all pitted, and I was able to put in some quicker laps. And after the pit stop, I just got right out of in front of Jake Sturgis. So that was my target actually after the pit stop. So that was really successful. After that, the car felt super good for 2 or 3 laps, and I closed the gap with Steven quite quickly, but once I got into dirty air, there was no holding the car, and I struggled a lot. So from there, I just needed to keep it on track, put as much pressure on Steven, but I couldn't even get within 0.5 seconds. So yeah, in the end, I even crashed almost. So I brought it home in 5th position, which is quite good, and it just told me that I'm still 3rd in overall. So that makes me really happy.
So overall 3rd position in the championship, definitely not a bad result for now. Next 2 weeks, of course, the next race is on Watkins Glen, another classic track here. We're driving the classic boot version, so what are you expecting for that?
Well, not much. This track I really didn't like driving, and the car is so horrible to drive. I think Hugo mentioned it early in the interview, but it's way out of control. It's not fun at all to drive here, so iRacing really needs to work on this car, I believe, and or maybe different tracks, because yeah, practicing is not fun, and well, at least for me, I can't speak for other guys, of course. So I certainly didn't enjoy it. I hope next season we have better tracks and a better car to drive here, or not here actually. But next track is Watkins, which is not of my favorites either. But yeah, what can I do? I just need to drive, practice, and get the best out of it.
Definitely collecting points. Once again, 5th position finish at Sebring, 3rd in the championship at Kirchhoff. From Redline Racing, back to Will.
Thank you very much, Marius. And for Atze Kirchhoff, still finishing on that still in 3rd position in the championship standings. And don't forget, if you'd like to hear Atze in more detail, along with Dom Duham, the team principal for Team Redline, head over to GlacierTV.com and click on the archives, where you can see a 30-minute interview in depth with Team Redline. We'll also be bringing you an in-depth interview with Team My3ID this coming Monday. If you'd like to ask any questions to those boys, use hashtag GlacierTV, ask your question, we'll ask it on Monday evening. Podcast will be out about Wednesday or Thursday, because I'm slow and lazy. But Paul, I'm going to come to you very quickly. Driver of the race. There's so many different people you can talk about here. Gregor Hutu, getting that 2-stop working perfectly. Stephen Michaels, a standout drive for him. Atze Kirchhoff, riding up through the field to get a top 5. Max Delorco, once again, alternative strategy working for him. And then also Antoine Hegelin, the first Pro Series driver to race in the 2013 World Championship Series, and getting a top 10 in the process. Go.
Yeah, you've named a lot of drivers that deserve mention, and of course, you know, it seems that we're always talking about Gregor Hutu and his amazing drives, but just another spectacular, just another clinic he put on for racing. It was a great drive by him. But I really think that I really have to say that Antoine Hegelin, what an amazing spirited drive. You know, a guy who's had to fight his way into here and just puts on a good show. And, you know, a 9th place finish, solid considering the level of talent that surrounds him here. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and put Antoine on my list.
Marius?
It's hard to think about anything else than Antoine. I mean, first race in the Drivers' World Championship, and such a great result for him. Taking a look at the results like that, I mean, 9th wouldn't particularly stand out here, but then you take a look at the license tab and you see Pro/WC all the way. So he's the only driver here, once again, from the Pro Series squad, making it into the race. So that alone is pretty much, yeah, already a guarantee for fun in the race, or a guarantee for a good experience. But he makes a 9th position out of that, and that definitely deserves a credit. And I don't know how hard it must have been for him, but taking a look at this field, he's definitely done good. And finishing in the top 10, that's definitely more than you can ask for. So I think, yeah, my vote goes for Antoine as well. Great race.
And for me, it's going to go to Antoine Hegelin. Simple as that. There we are. Let's move on. I mean, I have to say, you know, it is very difficult for Pro Series drivers to even get into the race. You know, they've got to rely on non-World Championship Series drivers not qualifying, and then from there, they've got to have a good drive from there. And for that 69 car, you know what? I always give a shout out to our Pro Series drivers. We, of course, broadcast the 2012 iRacing.com Pro Series of Road Racing. We saw so many good drivers there. We're seeing it again repeatedly And for Antoine Hegelin, he really is a star to watch over the coming months and years. Let's have a look at our championship standings then after the 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. And Gregor Husu now has a 55-point lead over Hugo Luis in the battle for the championship. Ati Kirkov sits in the 3rd position, 101 points behind Hutu. Martin Kroenke in 3rd, just 3 points behind Kirkov after his strong finish here today. Sturgios still in the 5th position. We barely talk about Jake Sturgios in that INX racing car, but still running in the top 5. Ika Hapada, after a good finish here today, 8th position, is in the 6th spot in the championship standings. And then in 7th is Enzo Benito, and this is where things get really tight. Enzo Benito, Max Delorco, just 1 point separates them. Luke McLean and Yudan Arumi, they are equal on points, 9th and 10th. Luke McLean gets the position due to a higher place finish in the championship so far. Of course, McLean had a horrible race for the 2nd time in a row here today, so he really needs to find a way of bouncing back as we go to Watkins Glen in 2 weeks' time. Very quickly, we'd like to take a bit of a moment to talk to Paul Ilbrink. And Paul, you've had a pretty up and down race here today. You come home, however, in the 12th position in that number 41 Radical Steel Series car, so good job.
Yeah, thanks. It was quite a challenging race today. It started quite hectic with, I think I nearly hit my teammate Mogar, who was flying across the track, and even had to come to a full stop in the 3rd corner already, so I thought it would hurt my race a lot, but I somehow managed to get back to a good position, so I'm very happy with that.
And you started this race in the 20th position, and you were right there in the melee that was going on the start-finish line. Jesper Pedersen upside down, your teammate Mogar Philo kind of all over the place. How difficult was it to avoid that incident? And not only that, but also figure out that you've got to gain positions early on to try and get that job done.
Yeah, well, it's not really a matter of skill to avoid it. It was just pure luck, I think, because I saw something happening and I moved a bit to the left, I think, at the start, and then just Mogar was suddenly there and I just missed him without hitting any other cars that were on the left to me, so it's more luck than skill, really.
And take us through your race itself. I mean, you've been involved in some pretty close battles all day. You had some battles early on with Daniel Lopez and some with Timo Evening, Dion Verges. But in the end, you're kind of running in no man's land by the end of it. You had, what, an 18-second gap to Evening behind you, a 10-second gap to Lopez ahead of you. And we've seen this before when we talked to you in the Pro Series, you know, just running by yourself. At times it can get tough.
Yeah, but it can be, but it was a bit of a fight in the beginning, but I think I had a bit more speed than Timo had, and because I dropped back a bit at the start, I was just looking to get some free air to get some decent lap times in. And I made a small mistake as well in the first corner on lap 3 or 4 or something, where I nearly crashed. And that helped slow me down a bit, but after that I just managed to drive a bit more to the front to Daniel. And it was also when Max made his pit stop. He came out just in front of me, which was a bit a shame because I thought he was on a 2-stop, but apparently he was quite slow, being fueled up to make it to the end. And that cost me a bit of time and increased the gap to Daniel. So from there on, I tried to close it again, but after the final stops and everything, yeah, the gap was just a bit too big. I had a little hope for Daniel to get into a fight with Matthias, but I don't know if they did, but they didn't slow down much, so yeah, I just brought it home.
And you almost actually run into the rear of Max Delorco after you got sideways. I believe it was in through turns 2, 3 and 4, just a lap after he came onto pit road. Was that a scary moment for you, and how much time did you actually lose in that process trying to get past Delorco?
I think I lost about 3 seconds or something, but it was quite scary, yeah, because I wasn't too far in front of Timo at the moment, and I just saw I was losing a lot of time, so when I got around on the straight I just went for the pass, still not knowing if Max was gonna get faster soon and got back to me, but I just had to hurry up to avoid from people behind me catching up with me.
And as the highest placed Radical Steel Series driver, do you get a pay rise from Andy Kay?
I think I'll have to share it with Andrew, because he did a great job since he had been struggling with qualifying, and he got in the race again, and he did a good job as well. So we'll have to split that one.
Yeah. 2 weeks' time, we head over to Watkins Glen. Some drivers call it their favourite track of the series. Other drivers hate it. What's your take on it?
I think we just had our favourite track now today, but yeah, it's less bumpy, of course, which probably a lot of people like. But I like this track a lot because it has proper braking zones and makes it a bit more challenging to lap around. And at Watkins Glen, it will be a lot of slipstreaming and I think a bit more difficult to overtake, so the race might be a bit more boring.
A World Championship Series race is never boring, but thank you very much, Paul. 12th place here today, the top place for so congratulations to you. And Paul, there's time to sum up. We've had in the last 2 weeks 2 very different rounds. Phillip Island, all about straight line speed, about drafting, about getting that job done in turns 1 and 2, and then also down into turn number 4 and 5. Here today, we've had a bumpy, chaotic, manic race. In 2 weeks' time, however, we go to Watkins Glen, which all these drivers know. All these drivers, you know, have an affinity for in some way, shape or form. And for Watkins Glen, it's a track that in some ways can produce some of the most amazing racing we see in the entire season. But it could also produce arguably the most boring race if things don't work out very well.
There is that possibility, but Watkins Glen is such a great venue for racing of any type, with any car, and I think that, you know, maybe up front it might be a foregone conclusion after the first stop, but I really do think that, again, like we did today, we keep our eyes towards the middle of the pack. We're going to see some pretty good contests going on throughout the race. You know, I really don't believe we're going to see a boring race. I think we're going to see a lot of action on this track. Again, a lot of these guys, this is one of the tracks where when you first start out, you put a lot of laps in. So very familiar territory for all these guys.
And when we turn our attention to 2 weeks' time, it is the Watkins Glen Classic boot layout, which means that we have pretty much the entire first half of the lap. You brake once down into turn number 1, and then you are flat out all the way down into the carousel. A high-speed corner leading into another medium-speed corner. Your first real braking zone for that track is turn number 7, and it is a scarily fast racetrack. But that curb on the outside of turn number 1, it caught a lot of drivers out in the Pro Series of road racing, and this year it could well do exactly the same thing, especially on the start.
Well, a car like this easily upset by a high curb, and that curb is basically vertical, so it's not so much hitting a curb, it's like hitting a storm cab. I mean, it's you just bounce off the thing, and it'll really upset the car. And if you're not careful, you can find yourself, even if you don't get skidded off the track, you may well damage the undercarriage of the car or the suspension with it.
Unfortunately, that is all we have time for this, the 6th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series here from Sebring International Raceway. Gregor Hutu extends that championship lead over Hugo Luis by taking a victory once again in the championship standings. Martin Kreuke coming home 3rd, Stephen Michaels in 4th, Ati Kirchhoff rounds out your top 5. Very quickly, I'd like to give a shout out first to Team Redline for World Championship tipping. Head over to teamredline.com/tipping for more information and to also have your say on who you think is going to win in each World Championship Series race. Also to our friends over at ETV and also to our good friends over at iRacing. To Shannon, to Sean, to Tony and everyone that does all the great work over there as well. I've been Will Vincent, that has been Paul Jenkins and Marius Golombeck as well. In 2 weeks' time, we head over to Watkins Glen. This championship is far from over, and after today, if you can say that there's no overtaking in the World Championship Grand Prix Series, then really, you've not been watching the WCS so far. We'll talk to you later on. Bye-bye.